my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com. My daily take is titled Operation Epstein Fury. Is this about national security or political survival? And, this is, a bonus. First of all, this is, Bibi Netanyahu has been arguing for this forever, right? Netanyahu is, has been accused of multiple crimes, including bribery and, corruption in office. And the only way he stays out of jail is by getting reelected as prime minister. So this is, and people are really pissed that back on October 7th, Netanyahu had not, in fact, had pulled some of the defenses out for the communities, right around Gaza, leading to that whole, Hamas attack. So, this is, in Bibi's mind, this is the thing that's going to keep him out of jail. For Donald Trump, I believe that he thinks this is the thing that's going to get the Epstein files off the front page. And to a large extent, he's right. War is always, always serves as a benefit in that direction. This morning, they're giving a Medal of Honor to a fellow who died in the war, and Trump starts out by lying, saying, I blew up the JCPOA, the Iran deal, and it was a terrible deal negotiated by Barack Hussein Obama. And, Iran would have had a nuclear weapon, and used it against us These are complete lies. Trump is also, he's provided no excuse for us to attack Iran now. And the War Powers Resolution of 1973 that was passed, in the wake of Nixon, the war and the 72 election, where Nixon said he had a secret plan to end the war, and it turned out, he lied. We discovered that after the election was over. That requires an attack on the United States, or an imminent attack, evidence of an imminent attack, a Pearl Harbor kind of event. There is no such thing. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Iran is not developing nuclear weapons. Iran was negotiating in good faith. Now, let me be very clear here. I'm no fan of the Iranian government or of the former Ayatollah Khamenei. This is an insane, theocratic, end times. They believe this, this Islamic version of the rapture kind of thing. It's just all very, very strange. Doing away with the Ayatollah, not necessarily a bad thing, but the way it was done, the timing of it being done, and who did it are frankly, in my opinion, all wrong. You've got Trump now violating international law. The UN's, our membership in the UN requires us not to attack other countries. We violated that law with Venezuela as well, not to attack other countries or engage in regime change wars unless we've been attacked first. It's a violation of domestic U.S. law. He's, as I said, he's violating the War Powers Resolution. And now he's throwing Iranian protesters under the bus by saying that he's willing to negotiate with the Iranians. Now the Iranians are saying, no, we're not willing to talk to you. The conflict is also spreading. Khamenei was to Shia Muslims around the world sort of like what the Pope is to Catholics. Now, he wasn't quite, as unified and all that, but Shia Islam is different from Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam is, most of the Arab states are Sunni. The Sunnis there's no centralized command structure. There's no Pope. In Shia Islam, the Grand Ayatollah has been filling the role of essentially Pope. Now, can you imagine how the Catholic world would respond if say, Russia killed the Pope, Pope Leo? This is why you're seeing protests now, erupting in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Lebanon. I'm waiting to see them pop up in other places like in Southeast Asia. But the conflict is spreading. And here at home, Trump is musing about using Iranian election interference in the 2020 election to seize control of our election apparatus this fall. And what's particularly ironic about that is, yes, Iran did intervene in the 2020 election. They sent emails to millions of registered Democrats basically saying, if you don't vote for Donald Trump, we're going to get you. We're the Proud Boys. And the Proud Boys were like, we didn't send that out. And the effort was designed to help Donald Trump because the Iranians, this was the 2020 election, the Iranians believed that a Biden presidency or, back in 2016, a Clinton presidency would be bad for them. Those people are fairly tough. They wanted Trump. They figured that, they could work things out with Trump. Yeah, right. Now we've got 4 Americans dead, 5 in critical condition, more than 200 young people. I mean, we have struck we or Israel, one or the other, struck a girls' school, over 150 girls dead. And then we struck a gymnasium in Iran, killed a whole bunch of young people there too. And this is early days. As Winston Churchill said, once the signal is given, no one can predict how far events will go. James Madison kind of foresaw this. This was back in April of 1790. He wrote a letter, and he said, of all the enemies to public liberty, war is perhaps the most to be dreaded because it comprises and develops the germ of every other. He talks about how the discretionary power of the president is increased. Quote, its influence in dealing out offices, honors, and emoluments is multiplied, and all the means of seducing the minds are added to those of subduing the force of the people. He says the same malignant aspect in republicanism can be traced to inequality of fortunes, which war provides. No nation, says James Madison, can preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare. And yet, here we are. So, this is just wrong. He is in violation of the War Powers Resolution. He's in violation of United States law. He's in violation of international law. And this is going to get uglier and uglier. I'll give you more details in just a few minutes. But in my opinion, the appropriate response to this is for Congress to impeach Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump as soon as possible. What say you? Day 2 of the Free Speech TV Fund Drive. This is your opportunity to participate with us. Become part of this family. Help Free Speech TV grow, especially if we can hit our goals here. Help us reach more people. Help us spread the good message. It's a tough time. I mean, we got Trump going nuts and war in the Middle East and everything else. There's never been a more urgent time, I think, than now to have progressive media, alternative media that actually tells the truth about what's going on, that isn't filtered through billionaires' desires or corporate coffers. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. We really need to keep this network going, and this is the only way to do it. This is what we have to do. Please consider making a contribution now, ideally a monthly contribution, a regular sustaining support. Thank you. Good day, I'm Thom Hartmann. Do we now know why we went to war with Iran? The Trump administration has stopped claiming Iran was developing a nuclear bomb and now instead says it launched the illegal strikes on Iran because it believed Israel was preparing an attack and that American troops would be targeted in response. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that it was clear Iran would retaliate against the United States if attacked by anyone. Rubio said officials knew an Israeli strike was coming and believed acting first, instead of talking Israel out of the attack, would reduce American casualties.
Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane briefed Congress behind closed doors ahead of a House vote on a war powers resolution that could force the president to end hostilities. Lawmakers are questioning why Congress was sidelined and whether Netanyahu telling Trump to do the strike justifies starting another Middle East war. When a democracy enters war without full public debate, it weakens the constitutional balance meant to protect us from executive overreach. The war is expanding. How far will it go? Iran widened the conflict Tuesday, striking the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia as Washington pulled personnel from across the region. The United States and Israel continued airstrikes, and Israel sent ground forces into Lebanon. Explosions shook Tehran. Hundreds have been killed, most of them in Iran. Oil and gas supplies are being disrupted, and shipping and air travel are under strain. President Trump said the conflict could last 4 or 5 weeks and did not rule out boots on the ground. As fighting intensifies, the question is no longer how this began, but how far it'll spread. Wars tend to expand beyond their original aims, and democracies often pay in blood, treasure, and public trust. Is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act, arguing the tax code now favors extreme wealth while millions struggle paycheck to paycheck. The bill would impose a 5% annual wealth tax on about 938 billionaires and raise an estimated $4.4 trillion over 10 years. Lawmakers say the revenue could expand healthcare, housing, childcare, education, while ensuring no one worth under $1 billion pays a penny more. Supporters call it a modest correction to runaway inequality, and opponents argue it would discourage investment and growth. When wealth concentrates this dramatically, democracy itself is strained, and fair taxation becomes a safeguard for working Americans. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it has received more than 110 complaints from service members at over 30 different installations since this war in Iran began. A combat unit commander allegedly told non-commissioned officers that the conflict is part of God's plan to usher in the end times. Military Freedom Foundation President Mikey Weinstein says some commanders are describing the war as biblically sanctioned. One non-commissioned officer reported that such rhetoric is harming morale and unit cohesion. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibit inserting personal religious doctrine into official military messaging. The Pentagon has not publicly responded. But when military authority merges with apocalyptic beliefs, like it had in Iran, by the way, the boundary between constitutional democracy and religious crusade begins to erode. A Jeffrey Epstein walk of shame near the White House. In Washington's Farragut Square, a display modeled on Hollywood's Walk of Fame names public figures associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Each star links to Department of Justice files released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The figures include Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Prince, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They're all again facing scrutiny. All have denied prior knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Across the political spectrum, many Americans are furious at what they see as the rich and powerful evading real responsibility in the Epstein scandal, and they're making clear that they will not stop demanding equal justice under the law, no matter how influential the names involved may be. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I'm Thom Hartmann.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hi, top of the Tuesday to you. Is deporting a journalist the ultimate form of cancel culture? We'll get to that in just a moment. Also, do we now know why we went to war with Iran? It's getting weird. And what's up with the Epstein walk of shame near the White House? In the second hour of our program, Kash Patel ousted FBI staff with Iran expertise right before Trump declared war on Iran. Say what? And is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? In the third hour of our program, Mikey Weinstein is going to drop by from the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? It appears that way. This is truly bizarre. But my opening rant today at HartmannReport.com is titled, "Is Deporting a Journalist the Ultimate Form of Cancel Culture?" And it's about these two guys who are filling in on or have taken over or whatever. I don't watch it, but the Charlie Kirk show. And they're going on off about Mehdi Hasan. And one of them says, yeah, he's just a repulsive creature. We gave him citizenship for some stupid reason. Now, Mehdi Hasan was born in England and came to the United States. He said, we gave him citizenship for some stupid reason, and he rewards us by dumping on an American icon and an American hero. Now, what Mehdi Hasan had said that had outraged these guys is that these giant Nazi-style banners that are hanging from at the Department of Justice, it's a Hitler-style banner of Donald Trump with his head about 40 feet tall. Over at the Department of Labor, there's another one of Trump. And over the Department of Education, there's one of now Charlie Kirk. And so Mehdi Hasan, who's been on this program, he's a good guy, he's a very smart guy, says, I will support any Democratic candidate for president who says the first thing he's going to do is tear down all these banners. These, Nazi-style banners. Well, not just Nazi-style. Saddam Hussein had one, banners like this too. Fidel Castro had banners like this too. This is a dictator kind of thing. And so anyhow, he goes on, he says, you know what, I'll give my primary support to whoever says we're going to try to find a way to strip this person's citizenship and send him back to some dump. And then the other guy says, yeah, we should. We actually should. He's a foreigner. And for some stupid reason in our stupid immigration system, he was allowed in. Then he's allowed to come in here and smear the memory of Charlie Kirk, the legacy of Charlie Kirk. And listen, those are the freedoms that have been bestowed upon him by a superior country and culture to his own. So now they're saying the United States has a superior culture and is a superior country to Great Britain. I like the United States. Up until Trump became president, I'd rather live here than in Great Britain. But I think that what they're really talking about is the fact that he's Muslim. And again, in fact, they say, and yeah, whatever, he's British or whatever it is, but he's a Muslim. And so, yeah, we have a superior culture than Mehdi Hasan's, and he's going to come here and he's bestowed the same freedoms that American citizens have long enjoyed. That's because he's an American citizen. And by the way, those rights and freedoms are guaranteed to everybody in the United States, even though we're not respecting them right now. The Fourth Amendment says you can't kick in somebody's door without a warrant. You can't arrest somebody without good cause. The Fifth Amendment says, essentially the same thing. You can't, you can't deprive anybody of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Just pretty straightforward stuff. And, this is like cancel culture on steroids. Dan Sisson and I wrote about this in our book, The American Revolution of 1800, about how when in the election of 1800, it was Vice President Thomas Jefferson versus President John Adams running for president. And the newspapers at the time, particularly the anti-Federalist newspapers, or the Federalist newspapers, excuse me, were just ripping Jefferson a new one. Now, the reason they were able to do this without much pushback was because President Adams, had shut down the 30 largest newspapers that were calling him out, the anti-Federalist newspapers, what today we would call the Democratic newspapers. Back then it was Democratic-Republican Party. They dropped the word Republican, but this was the party that Jefferson started. And Adams not only shut down the papers, but he threw their publishers, editors, and in some cases their writers in prison. And so basically the only papers out there were the pro-Adams Federalist, conservative newspapers. They were the only ones that were left in this election. And nonetheless, when Jefferson was asked how he felt about it, if he thought that if he became president, he should clamp down on the pro-Adams newspapers, for example, his response was, if I had to choose between having a government with no newspapers or newspapers with no government, I would surely choose the latter. And he actually went on. He said, I am persuaded myself that the good sense of the people will always be found to be the best army. They may be led astray for a moment, will soon correct themselves. The people are the only censors of their governors. And even their errors will tend to keep these to the true principles of their institution. To punish these errors too severely would be to suppress the only safeguard of the public liberty. In other words, don't go after the newspapers. He said the way to prevent these regular interpositions of the people is to give them full information of their affairs through the channel of the public papers, the newspapers, and to contrive that those papers should penetrate the whole mass of the people. And then he finally says, the basis of our government being the opinion of the people, the very first subject should be to keep that right, or object should be to keep that right. And were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. So, you know, here we have this. I tell the story of when I was 16 and I was in high school. I was publishing this underground anti-war newspaper called The Jurist, and I got kicked out of school for it, which, you know, wasn't a terrible thing for me because starting in second grade, I'd been in all these advanced courses as a result of Sputnik going up. So I just, you know, moved right into college. But, you know, kicking people out of school, trying to deport people, trying to strip people of their citizenship because they said something you don't like or they wrote something you don't like is just fundamentally un-American. And now we've got, you know, these right-wing snowflakes. It shouldn't surprise us, by the way. The basis of right-wing ideology, I mean, going all the way back to Aristotle, the basis of right-wing ideology has basically always been fear, hate, tribalism, xenophobia. I mean, you know, John Adams was the master of this stuff, for example, and authoritarianism. So it shouldn't surprise us, but I think it should horrify us, particularly given the state of our media today and, you know, what the Ellison family and other right-wing billionaires are now doing to our media. This is something that we should all be paying attention to. We should all be concerned about. And we should all, you know, frankly, be pushing back on and supporting independent media. I'll be right back. It's 14 minutes past the hour. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Stick around. And welcome back. And there we go. All right. Cliff in Santa Clarita, California. Hey, Cliff, what's on your mind today?
Sure. First, I want to say that Chuck Schumer needs to step aside and retire. He's a fossil, and we need some younger energy in there to lead the minority. Somebody like Malcolm Frost or Dan Goldman.
That's the wrong branch of Congress. You know, think of Chris Coons or Sheldon Whitehouse or somebody like that. But yeah, I understand your sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck's had his time. It's time to go. Also, Tom, I want the Democrats to start shouting from the heavens, morning, noon, and night about Trump, Epstein, this catastrophe. This is the most scandalous episode in this country's history, and it needs to constantly be pounded on a daily basis. No let up. It's just we have to be relentless, and we need to get this psychopath and all his enablers, these pedophile protectors. It's sickening. And the fact that our country isn't doing anything where all these other countries around the world are stepping up and doing the right thing. It's such a blatant cover-up. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
And also, Tom, real quick, the reckless spending by the Orange Man. Billions here, billions there. I think he's trying to bankrupt our country because his daddy, Putin, wants him to.
I think you're right.
So compromised. He is so compromised by Putin and Netanyahu pulling his strings.
Well, now we're discovering that the only reason that he attacked Iran is because Netanyahu basically told him to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
when did
that
we
last
become
week.
the dog and they're the tail that wags us?
Yeah. APAC.
Yeah. Interfering in our elections, owning our president. Jared Kushner, Netanyahu used to come visit the United States, and when he did, he would sleep in the spare bedroom in Jared Kushner's apartment.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
I mean, and so Kushner was out there negotiating, in scare quotes, with the foreign minister of Oman and the people from Iran. And it was all just show. I mean, Kushner was just doing this little, and he's not even a government employee. He doesn't work for us. He's a billionaire and a private investor, and Witkoff is only marginally a government employee. These guys were just doing performance. They were just leading the Iranians on to think that everything's good, while in the background we now know that for 3 months Trump and Netanyahu had been planning this attack on Iran. And this should not be. I mean, this just should not be. We should not be doing yes, Iran represented a threat to Israel. Iran has represented a threat to Israel forever. The threat, in my opinion, was diminishing, but, what do I know? I'm not in Israeli intelligence. But that's Israel's problem. It's not our problem. I mean, it's like, what, are we supposed to go around the world and say, are there any countries out there who are experiencing a threat from another country? I mean, now you've got, Pakistan and Afghanistan going after each other. Should we intervene there?
Oh, he's blowing up the whole Middle East. This thing is, they didn't think this thing through, obviously, and it's going to blow up in their face.
But Bibi thought it through. I mean, now he's taking chunks of Lebanon. This is absolutely what Netanyahu wanted. Thanks a lot, Cliff. Thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. We'll be back. It's 18 minutes past the hour. Stay tuned. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out.
They shout about the First Amendment, wave the flag and pound the pulpit loud, say they're guardians of freedom, standing tall and standing proud. But say one word they don't agree with, watch the temperature go nuclear. Suddenly it's not a debate. It's strip him of his paper's culture, marketplace of ideas, not if you're the wrong shade of free. Talk is cheap until you disagree. Oh, welcome to the MAGA cancel culture, where dissent is disloyalty
22 minutes past the hour. So the explanations for the war are changing and morphing. We've gone through, what, 4 different explanations now in the last 24 hours? And none of them make sense. What we're increasingly hearing, I mean, the official answer now from Marco Rubio is we hit Iran because we knew that if either we or Israel hit Iran, Iran would retaliate against American troops. And so we hit them so that they would retaliate against us, but so that we could prevent them from retaliating against us because we hit them first. But if we had hit them first, then they would have retaliated. If this makes no sense to you, it makes no sense to anybody. Except, you know, the lick spittles on the right. But this is, I mean, it's just wild. You had Marco Rubio out there doing kabuki theater. You had Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner, who, when Bibi Netanyahu used to visit America back 20, 30 years ago, he slept in the spare room in Jared Kushner's house, in Jared Kushner's dad's house. Jared Kushner's father is now our ambassador to France, and they won't talk to him, basically. They've forbidden him. You know, he's a professional con man. He went to prison for being a professional con man, Kushner's dad. And so Kushner is out there pretending to negotiate with the Iranians and the Omani foreign minister, who are all taking this very seriously. And the day before we started bombing Iran, the Omani foreign minister said, hey, you know, it looks like we're going to get even a better deal than Obama got with the JCPOA. The Iranians are more than willing to say, nope, we will never do anything with nuclear weapons. And we will not build ICBMs that could attack America. You don't have to worry about us. Just leave us alone. But, you know, Netanyahu said Iran is a threat to Israel, which is true. Iran and Israel have been at each other forever. And so Netanyahu apparently, you know, well, he didn't apparently. He came to the United States 2 weeks ago. He met with Trump and Kushner, and they put this plan together. Actually, that was probably finalizing it because it's been in place apparently for 3 months. Put this plan together to attack Iran, where the United States is doing Israel's dirty work for it. And who's it blowing back on? The United States. Israel's actually expanding the war. I mean, they're in Lebanon now. They're taking pieces of Lebanon. They just occupied parts of southern Lebanon, saying that it's to protect our people, you know. Well, that's fine. I mean, Israel's entitled to protect themselves and do whatever they, you know, damn well please. But are we supposed to be their stooges? Senator Mark Warner, who's, you know, in the Intelligence Committee, he said this is still a war of choice and that was dictated by Israel's goals and timeline. There was no imminent threat to the United States by the Iranians, but there was a threat to Israel. I mean, you know, and then Rubio says, yes, these strikes were preventative. Preventative of what? Iran wasn't coming after us. They were coming after Israel. And we don't even know that for sure. It's crazy stuff. Meanwhile, in Washington's Farragut Square, some wags have reinvented or recreated the Hollywood Walk of Fame, you know, with the stars on the sidewalk. Only these stars are the names of people mentioned in the Epstein files, like, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell and Bill Clinton, the former Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, Howard Lutnick. Americans are basically furious about this whole thing. And I think that the outrage that Americans are experiencing and that they're communicating to their elected officials, by the way, is not just around the probability that Donald Trump was raping 13-year-olds along with Jeffrey Epstein and a whole bunch of their rich buddies were doing the same thing. I think it goes way beyond that. It goes to the point that all of these guys are fabulously rich and none of them have faced any consequences whatsoever. I think Americans, average working class Americans, average everyday Americans are getting absolutely sick and tired of having one set of rules for the billionaire class, the Epstein billionaire class, and a different set of rules for all the rest of us. And that's the cleavage. That is where this whole this massive cover-up that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and company and Kash Patel are running this scam, this cover-up scam. I think that's the main reason why people are pissed about it. I mean, obviously, they're furious about what happened to these young girls too. But this is continuing to this day, the cover-up.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So what say you? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Hey, it's time to get over to freespeech.org or call 877-378-8669 and register your support for free, independent, widely available across the United States, actual news and opinion reporting that tells the truth here on Free Speech TV. This network only exists because of your support, period. Without your support, there is no Free Speech TV. And if you've never given to Free Speech TV before, please consider becoming a member of our family. Consider joining us. Be part of this thing. This little network that could, this little network that, just started out with nothing and has just incrementally, step by step, grown into something really extraordinary. If you support this program, if you support the programming on Free Speech TV, give them a call or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. Ideally a monthly one, a regular monthly one, to help keep this message going. Thanks.
Good day, I'm Thom Hartmann. Do we now know why we went to war with Iran? The Trump administration has stopped claiming Iran was developing a nuclear bomb and now instead says it launched the illegal strikes on Iran because it believed Israel was preparing an attack and that American troops would be targeted in response. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that it was clear Iran would retaliate against the United States if attacked by anyone. Rubio said officials knew an Israeli strike was coming and believed acting first, instead of talking Israel out of the attack, would reduce American casualties. Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane briefed Congress behind closed doors ahead of a House vote on a war powers resolution that could force the president to end hostilities. Lawmakers are questioning why Congress was sidelined and whether Netanyahu telling Trump to do the strike justifies starting another Middle East war. When a democracy enters war without full public debate, it weakens the constitutional balance meant to protect us from executive overreach. The war is expanding. How far will it go? Iran widened the conflict Tuesday, striking the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia as Washington pulled personnel from across the region. The United States and Israel continued airstrikes, and Israel sent ground forces into Lebanon. Explosions shook Tehran. Hundreds have been killed, most of them in Iran. Oil and gas supplies are being disrupted, and shipping and air travel are under strain. President Trump said the conflict could last 4 or 5 weeks and did not rule out boots on the ground. As fighting intensifies, the question is no longer how this began, but how far it'll spread. Wars tend to expand beyond their original aims, and democracies often pay in blood, treasure, and public trust. Is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act, arguing the tax code now favors extreme wealth while millions struggle paycheck to paycheck. The bill would impose a 5% annual wealth tax on about 938 billionaires and raise an estimated $4.4 trillion over 10 years. Lawmakers say the revenue could expand healthcare, housing, childcare, education, while ensuring no one worth under $1 billion pays a penny more. Supporters call it a modest correction to runaway inequality, and opponents argue it would discourage investment and growth. When wealth concentrates this dramatically, democracy itself is strained, and fair taxation becomes a safeguard for working Americans. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it has received more than 110 complaints from service members at over 30 different installations since this war in Iran began. A combat unit commander allegedly told non-commissioned officers that the conflict is part of God's plan to usher in the end times. Military Freedom Foundation President Mikey Weinstein says some commanders are describing the war as biblically sanctioned. One non-commissioned officer reported that such rhetoric is harming morale and unit cohesion. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibit inserting personal religious doctrine into official military messaging. The Pentagon has not publicly responded. But when military authority merges with apocalyptic beliefs, like it had in Iran, by the way, the boundary between constitutional democracy and religious crusade begins to erode. A Jeffrey Epstein walk of shame near the White House. In Washington's Farragut Square, a display modeled on Hollywood's Walk of Fame names public figures associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Each star links to Department of Justice files released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The figures include Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Prince, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They're all again facing scrutiny. All have denied prior knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Across the political spectrum, many Americans are furious at what they see as the rich and powerful evading real responsibility in the Epstein scandal, and they're making clear that they will not stop demanding equal justice under the law, no matter how influential the names involved may be. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I'm Thom Hartmann.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out. We're not muted. We're live and on the air here. Picking up your calls here, Mike in Gainesville, Virginia. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hey, Thom. I want to give you some insight on the Israeli attack on Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Basically, the negotiations was a ruse. Netanyahu would never want to have an agreement with Iran.
Yeah,
we never want the United States to sign an agreement with Iran. But the negotiations lulled the Iranians in the sense that they were not going to get hit.
Yep.
And they also...
Which raises the question, Mike, do you think any country in the future is going to negotiate with the United States in good faith?
It's going to be tough because basically their leadership came out of the bunkers and basically we're meeting. So once Israel had the target, and I'll let you know, for my entire career, we had an absolutely strict rule against ever sharing targeting information with the Israelis concerning foreign leaders.
Your career is what?
We were my career with Department of Defense for over 30 years.
Okay.
We were never allowed to share targeting information of foreign leaders with the Israelis. Mm-hmm. So Trump had to overturn that regulation.
Yeah. I'm wondering if Kushner, Jared Kushner, first of all, he's his longtime family friends with Bibi Netanyahu. Netanyahu, when he came to the United States back in the 80s, used to sleep in Kushner's apartment, in the spare bedroom next to Jared's. This is when Jared was a kid. And so, they've known each other forever. So I'm wondering if Kushner and Witkoff were doing these phony baloney negotiations with Iran, not just to lull them into a sense of security or whatever, but to cause them to bring together in one place all of their senior leadership
absolutely.
to consider the latest American proposal. And then once that leadership all came together, and apparently they all did, we killed 40 people with one strike apparently when we took out the Ayatollah, then, you know, we just drop a bomb on their heads and kill them all. I mean, again, what country on earth would ever negotiate in good faith with us, looking, you know, knowing how we did this?
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's what they did. Absolutely, that's what they did. That's the only way they could have gotten that target information, is that they knew all the Iranian leadership was gathering at that one location. So the Israelis went in and hit them. Rubio's excuse is basically Iran was going to lash out against everybody. That's basically the scenario of Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, well, Rubio said, he came out and said it, that Israel was going to attack Iran. We knew that.
Right.
And we knew that Iran was going to retaliate by attacking American forces and interests in the region, and so therefore we thought we'd be preemptive. Well, why didn't you just stop Israel from attacking Iran? I mean, we give them $3 billion. Well, actually, we give them a hell of a lot more than that. We give them billions of dollars every year. We support them 16 ways to Sunday. We've been putting up with Netanyahu's genocidal campaign in Gaza. The slaughter of 70,000 people. I mean, we could have changed our policy relative to them, but instead, it sure looks like, in this Trump-Kushner administration, that Bibi Netanyahu is now calling the shots. And what's it doing here? We're going to see gasoline going up a couple dollars a gallon. Where the stock market's down 1,000 points, or I think it's around 600 right now. You're going to see significant inflation as a consequence of the Straits of Hormuz being closed. Oil supplies all around the world. America's reputation is once again in the toilet. And Trump is now talking about a long-term war. I mean, this is just obscene. Mike, I got to move along, but thank you. Excellent points. Okay. Yeah, good points. Thank you, Mike. Bob in Desert Hot Springs, California. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I had a question for you, Tom, in your opinion. If the Democrats take control of the House and the Senate, do you think, can they overturn Citizens United? And if they can, do you think they will? Because I think that's the nucleus of all our problems.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the nucleus of all our problems. That's the original cancer in our democracy, is this idea that money is the same thing as free speech and corporations are the same thing as people. To a large extent, Congress can overturn Citizens United. They can't do it entirely. The main thing, and that they could easily do, and by the way, individual states could be doing this right now, is to say corporations are not persons. We're just, we're going to, corporations can be regulated by the states. Their political activity can be regulated. We can even pass a law saying corporations can't make political contributions. That's an easy thing. That doesn't even contradict Citizens United, frankly. It just reduces the damage that Citizens United has done. The other part of Citizens United, though, is that's based on the Buckley decision in 1976. Is that billionaires can use money instead of speech, that money is the same thing as speech. That's more problematic because the Supreme Court, for at least 5 right-wing Republicans on the Supreme Court, led by Clarence Thomas, who himself was already on the take, have already ruled that if billionaires give you things, if they give you money, it's not a bribe, it's free speech. And whether you're a judge or whether you're a politician. That's going to probably take a constitutional amendment. But we can do a lot in this regard, Bob. And in fact, the For the People bill that was H.R. 1, Nancy Pelosi's first piece of legislation that she wanted to get passed through Congress back when Joe Biden became president, would have done that. And the only reason it didn't pass is because Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin refused to break the filibuster. And, right. We'd already be there. Frankly, I don't think had that passed, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would have stopped Republican voter suppression, which prevented 4.7 million people from voting or having their votes counted in the 2024 election, thus putting Trump into the White House. Had those 2 pieces of legislation happened, if Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin had not stabbed not just the Democratic Party, but the entire damn country in the back, then, right. Yeah, we'd be a whole lot farther down the democracy road. And I doubt Donald Trump would have ever been elected president. Bob, thanks. That was a great question. Thank you. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Tom, yeah, I heard, I think, probably one of the worst stories on NPR yesterday. for NPR, that is. And I was just sitting in the car waiting for my partner to come out of the store. And it was NPR, it was the afternoon news. And the woman reporter said, well, we want to get reaction about the bombing, the bombing in Iran and what's reaction here in the United States. But I want to start with this shooting down in Texas, where a man, there was 2 killed and 14 wounded. And is this terrorism? And let's go to our reporter, and it goes to the man who says, well, the experts are saying that it's possibly linked to terrorism. Yes, because the shooter was a naturalized 53-year-old man, naturalized citizen from Senegal, who was wearing a hoodie that said, property of Allah, and a Quran was found in his car.
Well, he also had an Iranian flag with him.
Yeah, and he had an Iranian flag. Okay, so, but
I think he did kill those people because, basically on behalf of Iran.
You do?
I do. Yeah, I don't think that you shoot, you kill a bunch of people wearing a hoodie that says Allah and with an Iranian flag in your car just for some random reason.
Okay. And so what about all of the other instances of terrorism, of mass shootings from our right-wing Christian American citizens?
Well, those are, we have an administration now that refuses to call those terrorism. But if you're talking about like the Tree of Life or the black people who were killed at the Kroger in I forget what city it was, those were terrorist acts. They were white supremacist terrorist acts. This is just the modern version of the Klan, terrorism? Paul.
Is shooting just all shootings in the United States? They're all terrorism?
No.
But mass shootings are terror.
Well, they are if they're directed against people because of the color of their skin or because of their religion or their national, past.
Well, to me, that sounds like a profile to me. That if we were to find somebody who committed a shooting at a Planned Parenthood clinic and was wearing a hood that said "Praise Jesus" and a Bible was found in his car, you'd never hear anybody call that terrorism.
I would call it terrorism. I've been calling it terrorism for 25 years.
Yeah, NPR wouldn't.
Well, that's NPR's problem. But, increasingly, I get it, Paul, that, this administration and the whole Republican, the billionaire, the Epstein class, all these guys, if white people start killing black or brown people, that's not terrorism. What happened down in El Paso, for example. They refuse to call that terrorism. I don't refuse to call it terrorism. I think it absolutely is. Paul, thank you for the call. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where we dare to ask, is Walmart a person? And we dare to say, no, the Republicans on the court got that one wrong, too. Welcome back, 45 minutes past the hour. David in Troy, New York. Hey, David, thanks for watching us on Substack Live. What's on your mind today?
Hello, Mr. Hartmann. On the subject of Iran, I know you were talking about this a while back, but I wanted to contrast Iran with Israel on its defensive long-range missile policy. I saw yesterday on video Iran's foreign minister telling a news organization that his government prohibits, it will not allow missiles with a range exceeding 2,000 miles. And I think the implication there is to say that Iran is deliberately making itself only a danger to its nearby enemies and not to the United States.
That's correct, David. And they've been singing that song for, ever since the JCPOA.
Yes.
Which I think was 2010.
And then you have, thank you. And then you have in contrast Israel. Israel has nuclear weapons already. The reason they have them is because an Israeli traitor agent within the United States government stole nuclear secrets and smuggled them to Israel. And not only that, Israel has
Jonathan
what's called
Pollock?
the Samson. Yes, and they have what's called the Samson Doctrine, Samson being named after the biblical figure from the Old Testament. And the Samson Doctrine is deliberately ambiguous, but it says that Israel can use nuclear weapons. It will definitely use nuclear weapons if it is facing imminent defeat from an invasion. And but some Israeli officials have said publicly that Israel should be feared as a rabid dog, and they have also said that if Israel is expecting to be defeated by invasion, they will send missiles everywhere they possibly can. They will try to destroy the entire planet with nuclear weapons.
Well, I'm not buying that, David, but look at what they did in Gaza. I mean, they leveled Gaza and killed at least 70,000 people, in response to Bibi Netanyahu taking 8 hours to respond to the Hamas attack, on the little communities near Gaza. This is an administration, the Netanyahu administration, that is, in my opinion, just openly criminal. And now they're attacking Palestinians in the West Bank as well. And this is traditional Palestinian territory, homeland, and it's just this ongoing process of what would you call it? Racial purification of Israel. I just can't go along with any of it. In my mind, Netanyahu is a war criminal. Israel has been committing war crimes. We got in bed with a war criminal. Of course, we've got a criminal as our president. He's been convicted of 34 felonies. He's been adjudicated as a rapist. And so, hook him up with Netanyahu, who is looking at prison time for corruption in office, for taking bribes and paying people off and things. And you look at the whole thing, and we've got these two criminals who the only way that they stay out of prison, both Trump and Netanyahu, is by staying in power. And Netanyahu is facing an election. And so he thought, attack Iran, and that'll win me another election cycle, and it probably will in Israel. I mean, people rally around the flag in Israel just like they do in every other country. So, David, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Spot on. 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. I've had to deal with It's no coincidence that the time in Europe when the church ran the continent, from around the 5th century to around the 15th or 16th century, that 1,000-year period is referred to as the Dark Ages. This is what happens when religion controls politics, when religion controls the state, the nation. And every nation of Europe was controlled essentially by the Catholic Church during that period of time. It got busted up with the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was what the founders of this country very much knew about. George Washington refused to declare himself a Christian. Thomas Paine wrote an entire book embracing atheism. Ben Franklin fled Massachusetts as a teenager to escape the religious threats. And Thomas Jefferson went off on it regularly. There's a whole piece about how the Republicans are trying to impose a new dark age on America. It's all laid out, all the quotes and all the links over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Back 9 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. Maria in Philadelphia. Hey, Maria, what's up?
Hi. So I was calling about a couple things, but real quick. The elections and the fact that even though the Democrats are the minority, they could act like be on the offensive. They should be proactive in their approach with this regime. Right now, the regime is constantly on the offensive. Constantly says stuff and does stuff or against them or against anybody that they don't like, yet they don't react. They're reactionary. even now, even with this thing that's going on with Iran, which is a nightmare and going to give us World War III, maybe I'm being,
This war in the Middle East has already extended to Europe. Cyprus was hit.
Yeah, I heard that, I think, yesterday. Yeah. So, the point being that then I can't think of the right word right now, but you know what I'm talking about when I said I'm not being out like crazy when I'm saying this or out of my mind, whatever. Mm-hmm. But my point being this, those ships were circling like a bunch of sharks. I'm talking about our naval ships and, our the ones with the planes on them. I don't know, I'm having a bad...
Yeah, our aircraft carriers. I get it, Maria.
They were circling around Iran for at least a week or two, and they were more and more. The Congress was like, "Oh, they attacked," and all of a sudden now they're, "Oh, Mm-hmm. Why didn't they say back then, since they have not only the power of the purse, but they also supposedly are the ones that can declare war, only ones? Why didn't they open up their mouths and say, "Oh no, those ships are coming back. Get out of there"?
Yeah. Right? Well, for one thing, Mike Johnson had put them in recess. They just came back today. They weren't even in session yesterday. So you've got the Republicans who run the House and Senate not really wanting to do business. But the biggest problem, Maria, is that John Thune and Mike Johnson are terrified of Donald Trump, as are all the other Republicans. And if Donald Trump says jump, they say how high. And the sad thing and the unfortunate thing is that Donald Trump asks how high when either Vladimir Putin or Bibi Netanyahu tell him to jump. So here we've got Putin and Netanyahu basically running our government through their proxy, Donald Trump. And that's no way to run a damn country. So, Maria, I gotta move along, but thank you. Point made and well made. Thank you. Kenyatta in Los Angeles. Hey, Kenyatta, what's up?
I wanted to answer a question that you asked, I guess, rhetorically earlier. You were talking to a gentleman and you said after the shenanigans regarding the negotiations with Iran, who would ever want to negotiate with the United States again? And I say that must have been a rhetorical question because for 400 years, the United States has violated almost every treaty that was ever made with original Americans.
That's a good point.
The Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act that came about right around the time I was born is not mainly for black people of the United States, is not only still being litigated, it's being diminished and reduced. And I'm still waiting for my 40 acres in that damn mule. So anyone,
I get it.
Anyone that doesn't expect to be urinated on by the United States is just a fool. And my dad used to tell me all the time, never get in a urinating contest with a skunk.
Yeah.
Now,
you can say pissing on the air, by the way.
Let me get to this. Donald Trump is insane. And I mean it in a clinical sense.
Yeah, I agree with you.
He is absolutely bat crazy. And you mentioned how people fear him, but think about other bat guano crazy people that people fear. Charles Manson, Reverend Jim Jones, Adolf Hitler. I mean, this country, I'm not being facetious or trying to be funny. The United States is being run, is in a very dangerous situation. This country is being run by insane people.
Yep. And incompetent people. I mean, I don't know if you caught Rachel Maddow's monologue last night, but she just went through all these senior officials in the U.S. administration. For example, the FBI put together a special unit that just specialized in Iranian intelligence, right? And a week ago, Kash Patel fired them all. Fired them. Because these were the same guys, this was an elite unit, and so, if you're going to inspect the home of the former president of the United States, you bring in your most elite people. You want to make sure that everything is done absolutely perfectly by the book. And that's who they brought in to search Mar-a-Lago for the top secret stuff that Donald Trump had stolen and was giving to Russian and Chinese spies. And those guys then became the elite Iranian intelligence group, who were protecting us from threats, sleeper cells inside the United States. Kash Patel fired them all last week. I mean, probably while he was drinking in Italy. So, yeah. No, I completely agree with you, Kenyatta, and I know you've been writing about this over in your Substack newsletter as well. And we are in the grip of psychopaths. I mean, it's just no other way to describe it.
Well, this cannot turn out well, as Danny DeVito said in The War of the Roses to Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. There is no winning here. There are only degrees of losing.
Yeah. Sadly, very sadly. Kenyatte, always nail it. Thank you so much for the call, and keep up the great writing. We're hitting the top of the hour here on the other side of the break. As I was just telling you, Kash Patel just fired a bunch of FBI agents. We'll get into that. Also, is it time? Bernie thinks it is for the morbidly rich to start paying their damn taxes. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out. You know, when I was 13, my dad made me take a typing class in junior high school. And it was me and 30 girls. And it's probably the best skill I learned. But we were typing, our practice typing was, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country, which is kind of a paraphrase on an old Thomas Paineism. But now is truly the time for all of us, all good people, to come to the aid of our country. And one of the most effective ways we can do that is by supporting independent, progressive media. Because our country, make no mistake about it, is under assault. It's under assault from right-wing billionaires who are buying up media and turning it into neo-fascist echo chambers. It's under assault from a psychotic man who's in the White House right now and the lickspittles who surround him. And we need independent media, and that's what you're watching right now. This is Free Speech TV is independent media. So please support Free Speech TV now. Thank
you. Good day, I'm Thom Hartmann. Do we now know why we went to war with Iran? The Trump administration has stopped claiming Iran was developing a nuclear bomb and now instead says it launched the illegal strikes on Iran because it believed Israel was preparing an attack and that American troops would be targeted in response. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that it was clear Iran would retaliate against the United States if attacked by anyone. Rubio said officials knew an Israeli strike was coming and believed acting first instead of talking Israel out of the attack, would reduce American casualties. Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane briefed Congress behind closed doors ahead of a House resolution that could force the president to end hostilities. Lawmakers are questioning why Congress was sidelined and whether Netanyahu telling Trump to do the strike justifies starting another Middle East war. When a democracy enters war without full public debate, it weakens the constitutional balance meant to protect us from executive overreach. The war is expanding. How far will it go? Iran widened the conflict Tuesday, striking the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia as Washington pulled personnel from across the region. The United States and Israel continued airstrikes, and Israel sent ground forces into Lebanon. Explosions shook Tehran. Hundreds have been killed, most of them in Iran. Oil and gas supplies are being disrupted, and shipping and air travel are under strain. President Trump said the conflict could last 4 or 5 weeks and did not rule out boots on the ground. As fighting intensifies, the question is no longer how this began, but how far it'll spread. Wars tend to expand beyond their original aims, and democracies often pay in blood, treasure, and public trust. Is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act, arguing the tax code now favors extreme wealth while millions struggle paycheck to paycheck. The bill would impose a 5% annual wealth tax on about 938 billionaires and raise an estimated $4.4 trillion over 10 years. Lawmakers say the revenue could expand healthcare, housing, childcare, education, while ensuring no one worth under $1 billion pays a penny more. Supporters call it a modest correction to runaway inequality, and opponents argue it would discourage investment and growth. When wealth concentrates this dramatically, democracy itself is strained, and fair taxation becomes a safeguard for working Americans. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it has received more than 110 complaints from service members at over 30 different installations since this war in Iran began. A combat unit commander allegedly told non-commissioned officers that the conflict is part of God's plan to usher in the end times. Military Freedom Foundation President Mikey Weinstein says some commanders are describing the war as biblically sanctioned. One non-commissioned officer reported that such rhetoric is harming morale and unit cohesion. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibit inserting personal religious doctrine into official military messaging. The Pentagon has not publicly responded. But when military authority merges with apocalyptic beliefs, like it had in Iran, by the way, the boundary between constitutional democracy and religious crusade begins to erode. A Jeffrey Epstein walk of shame near the White House. In Washington's Farragut Square, a display modeled on Hollywood's Walk of Fame names public figures associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Each star links to Department of Justice files released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The figures include Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Prince, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They're all again facing scrutiny. All have denied prior knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Across the political spectrum, many Americans are furious at what they see as the rich and powerful evading real responsibility in the Epstein scandal, and they're making clear that they will not stop demanding equal justice under the law, no matter how influential the names involved may be. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I'm Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, America stands alone. Keir Starmer, the Great Britain, has said, no, you cannot use our bases at Diego Garcia, I think it is. The Chagos Island, the UK's Chagos Islands. He's trash-talking Keir Starmer for this. And, yeah, Diego Garcia. And now Spain is saying you may not use our bases in, they control an island near Iran. And he says, Trump says, we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain. Spain has been terrible. And this is because, they said, no, you can't use our bases either. In fact, he's suggested that he might even seize NATO bases. I mean, this is just wild stuff. We're seeing, the market is a mess, right? The Dow is down a percentage point right now. It's down 532 points. The S&P and NASDAQ are down. The White House has sent out a sheet to all the right-wing media that was obtained by a left-winger. And it says, these are the things that you should say about what's going on. Number one, that we've destroyed their missiles and razed their missile industry to the ground. Number two, that we've annihilated their Navy. Number three, that we've ensured that terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region and the world and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, and ensure that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. This is as a byproduct of Operation Epstein Fury's success, Epic Fury. 49 of the most senior Iranian regime leaders, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, have been wiped off the face of the earth in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury. Yeah. Trump has done what American presidents for 50 years have failed to do. That's basically the message. Meanwhile, as I mentioned in the previous hour, but I think it deserves a much deeper look, the FBI's Washington field office created this group of FBI agents. It's called CI-12. And it was a secret group within the FBI whose only job was to track down Iranian sleeper cells in the United States and expose Iranian operations against the United States. Iran had planned had an attempted planned assassination of Donald Trump. This is the group that busted that. Iran had planned assassination attempts against several other American officials, specifically John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, the former intelligence advisor and the former defense secretary. And this was the group in the FBI that found that and stopped those threats. And this is the group that Kash Patel, our nutty FBI director, I'm lacking a good word to describe this man. He behaves like a child, and he's running the damn FBI. And he's got an FBI SWAT team now protecting his girlfriend. It's like you just can't make this stuff up, right? So anyhow, this special group that protects us from Iranian assaults against the United States. And by the way, we had, down in Texas, this guy just killed 2 people and wounded 14. And he was wearing a T-shirt there, a hoodie that said Allah, and he had an Iranian flag or an Iranian logo in his car. The blowback may have already started. So Kash Patel fires these guys. So we've got nobody now, apparently, monitoring, what Iran is trying to do in the United States. Now, why would we do that? Why now? I mean, just ask yourself that question. Why on earth would the President of the United States and his lickspittle, Kash Patel, the buggy Kash, why would they cripple American intelligence and law enforcement when it comes to stopping a terror attack against America by Iran? Why would they do that? I think if you want to answer that question, all you have to do is look back at what happened to George W. Bush after 9/11. Those of you who are old enough to remember, I realize it's been 2 decades now, but when George Bush became president on January 20th of 2001, he was put there by 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court. One of them openly said that she was voting to put him on because she was leaving. Her husband had Alzheimer's and she wanted to care for her husband, and she didn't want her replacement to be appointed by Al Gore. So the Supreme Court stopped the recount in Florida that would have given the election to Al Gore. We now know that from the New York Times audit of that election. The Supreme Court stopped that recount and made George Bush president. And everybody in America knew it. That this guy, this entitled rich kid whose brother had pushed him over the top in Florida by knocking 90,000 African Americans off the voting rolls in the months before the election so that George W. Bush could win Florida by 535 votes, or 537, I think it was. That this guy was not viewed as credible. He was not viewed as legitimate, George W. Bush. His popularity was in the tank. He was in desperate straits. He was in bad shape. I mean, you know, the country just basically hated him. And he was working on his tax breaks for billionaires, of course, because he's a Republican, and that's what you have to do if you're a Republican president, when 9/11 happened. And within a week, his popularity went from under 50% to like 80%. I don't have the exact numbers, you can look them up, but it was in that kind of range. And Donald Trump, I believe, is hoping that the same thing will happen here. Now, I realize it's a terrible thing to say that you think that the President of the United States wants there to be a terror attack on American soil so that he can exploit it the same way George W. Bush did and the Republicans did back in 2001. But it sure looks that way to me. Why else would Kash Patel have fired these people now? You know, I get it that they were also the same elite team that went down to Mar-a-Lago and searched Mar-a-Lago, and that Donald Trump is pissed off about that, and he wants blood, he wants scalps, he wants his revenge. He's a petty, sick, twisted little man for whom revenge is basically his oxygen. I get that. But these guys were protecting us from Iran. And Trump knew he was going to attack Iran. This thing has been in the works for 3 months, at least. So why would he do this? Can you come up with a better answer? I mean, you know, talk me off the ledge here. Feel free. Michael Anderson, the president of the Society of Former Special Agents of the FBI, issued a statement this morning. He said, the summary dismissal of experienced agents and analysts, especially those with experience in Iranian counterintelligence, seriously undermines the FBI workforce in addressing the significant and ever-increasing threats our nation faces today. We strongly urge that Director Patel and FBI leadership end summary dismissals and follow FBI policy and the U.S. Constitution with respect to due process for all FBI employees. Pretty straightforward stuff. And yeah, we should be doing that. We're not giving FBI employees due process. Well, we don't give immigrants due process. We don't give protesters due process. Due process kind of seems like it's in the tank. Amazing. 15 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Stick around. Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna have a plan to deal with America's billionaire infestation. I'll tell you about that right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann program.
It's the place where despair is not an option. I'll be right back. And welcome back. Chaz in Lakewood, Washington. Hey, Chaz, what's on your mind today?
Spasiba, comrade, is another glorious Dan Trumpistan, is it not?
Indeed. Well, sort of, yeah. It's maybe we'll have a little sun here in Portland. What's up, Chaz?
The answer is 9 days. The question is, how many days between the time that Trump announced his quote-unquote board of peace and then he attacked Iran?
Yeah.
And so only 20 different countries had to blow $1 million to find out that they, too, had been fleeced by Donald Trump.
Right. I want to know what's the deal with the apparently hundreds of millions of dollars that came from our selling Venezuelan oil that appears to be in a private checking account in, Bahrain, as I recall? in the name of Donald Trump rather than the United States government.
I saw a video yesterday that showed the vast sum that Donald Trump has earned from his presidency versus every other president the last 100 years. And it was like an order of like 6 or 7 to 1.
Yeah. No, he's made over $4 billion since he became president, according to some estimates. Yeah, it's
and you know what? There's a limited amount of money, and that means less money for the rest of us.
There you go. Yeah, at a certain point, it does become a zero-sum game. Chaz, thank you. Well said. Rick in Castro Valley, California. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Fine.
Real quick, as I was mentioning to your screener, don't put it beyond the Trump administration to intentionally have fired these folks leading up to this attack in Iran, because they might be trying to create the conditions where you have uprising in this nation leading up to the midterms, and then you can use the Insurrection Act. These folks aren't beyond that. I mean, it might sound crazy, but given everything we've experienced, is not beyond the possibility.
Well, that's another great point, Rick. I mean, if there was an Iranian attack against the United States on the order of 9/11, if they were able to hijack an airplane, or if they just, built a Tim McVeigh-style truck bomb, right, and blew up some federal building someplace or a hotel or whatever, then Donald Trump could use that. He could claim that was his excuse and use that to attack our elections. He's obviously trying to figure out how to do this. They just had a meeting about this in Washington, D.C. last week.
Right. And, this is, this entire administration, it's beyond description. They all, as I mentioned earlier, it's like they all step in dog crap every day, but they don't own a dog, yet they walk around a freaking dog park. These people are nuts. Yeah. And I'm so afraid. I've been so upset. I've had to sort of disconnect a little bit just so I could live. This whole thing in Iran, we saw it coming, but I don't know that MAGA realized that many of these people who are going to come back are poor people, poor black kids, poor white folks who have very few opportunities being presented to them in this country. And they are the parents, the offspring of many of these people who have fought against these weird invasions and these long-term incursions.
Yeah.
So, so they're going to actually feel this pain more than most of us. And
they already are. I mean, Trump's inflation, Trump's gutting union protections, and Trump's firing hundreds of thousands of federal employees. All of these things, it's insane. Rick, thank you for the call. Well said. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Back in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was president, Earl Warren resigned from the Supreme Court. He was a liberal, even though he had been appointed by Eisenhower. Johnson wasn't able to replace him, in part because of Republican opposition in the Senate. And so when Nixon came in, he had this opening, but he wanted to have two openings. He wanted to get rid of Abe Fortas, who was the most liberal member of the court. So he had his attorney general, John Mitchell, start an investigation into Abe Fortas's wife. Now, there was nothing there. There was no smoke at all. She had done absolutely nothing wrong, and history has proven that. But they were going to drag her before a grand jury and possibly before Congress and just, drag her through the mud. And this caused Abe Fortas to resign, and that gave Nixon two openings, and that's how the court turned to the right. I'm suggesting that Democrats should do the same thing with Justice Thomas. I've got an op-ed about it at Hartmann Report. You can read it over there. Check it out. Back 21 minutes past the hour. Well, we've got a problem with our billionaires here. We've got a bumper crop of billionaires. We have more billionaires than any country on earth, and they're popping up at faster rates. Zuckerberg just bought a $100 and some odd $1 million mansion down in Florida. I mean, these guys are, they're living large. They're richer than any pharaoh, any king, any potentate, any emir, or in world history. The possible exception of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. I mean, these guys control mind-boggling amounts of money. And so Senator Bernie Sanders and Congressman Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act. And because billionaires, you can't raise their income taxes. I mean, if you raise their income tax to 90%, it still wouldn't matter because they don't live off income. They don't write themselves paychecks. The way that, if you write yourself a paycheck, then you have to pay FICA, you have to pay, Social Security and Medicare and all that kind of stuff. You got to pay that tax up to $170,000. And you also have to pay income taxes, and you can pay as much as, 36%, I think is the top income tax right now. Plus, you could end up paying another, 10, 15% in state and local taxes. So instead of taking income, what billionaires do is they'll say, okay, here's $1 billion worth of stock in my company. I'm going to borrow against this. And in some cases, they borrow against it with a bank that they own. So they make money on the interest that they pay. I'm going to borrow at 4%, let's say, and I'm just going to live off that borrowed money. Well, it does cost them 4%, but 4% is a hell of a lot better than 50%, right? What doctors and surgeons and high-end lawyers pay in income taxes. So this is how billionaires completely avoid their taxes. So if they're not paying income taxes because they're not taking income, how do you tax them? You tax their wealth. And, this is a pretty straightforward thing. We got 938 billionaires. If we imposed a 5% annual wealth tax on them, only on people worth over $1 billion, that would generate $4.4 trillion over the next decade. That could provide, this is according to Sanders and Khanna, the federal government could do all of these things as a result. Provide a $3,000 direct payment to every man, woman, and child in a household making less than $150,000. Reverse the $1.1 trillion cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is, those cuts are estimated to kick in later this year, and they will kill another 50,000 Americans. We could expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing care for millions of seniors. That would be real Medicare, of course, not the Medicare Advantage scams. We could build, rehabilitate, and preserve over 7 million affordable homes to eliminate the affordable housing gap and end homelessness. We can ensure that no family pays more than 7% of their income on child care. We could establish a $60,000 minimum annual salary for teachers in our public school systems, every teacher in America. And we could expand Medicaid home health care for seniors and people with disabilities. So when people reach the last years of their lives, they don't have to be institutionalized. They can stay at home, their families, and they will have some people coming in to help. We have a serious problem in America with inequality and with billionaires. And the inequality is making us crazy. This is something that Kate Pickett and Richard Wilkerson worked out years ago with their book, The Spirit Level, Quality Matters. These are two books that they wrote. It's a project out of the UK. But what they found is that as societies, and you could look at country after country after country, you can even look at state by state by state in the United States, as societies become more unequal, crime goes up, teenage pregnancy goes up, sexually transmitted diseases go up, mental illness goes up. I mean, pick your index of misery in life. Homelessness goes up, violent crime goes up, murder goes up, rape goes up, divorce goes up. All these different metrics of, shootings go up. The more unequal a society is, basically the more crazy people are. And there's a good reason for this. Walk into a kindergarten class with a big plate full of cookies and give one cookie to 3 of the kids and the whole plate to one kid and no cookies at all to half the kids, and see what happens. I mean, you know what would happen. Because, little kids don't have the filters that we adults have developed, to behave nicely and kind of pretend it's not going on. But this is what's going on right now. More than half of America, 60% of America, can't deal with a $400 expense, an unexpected expense. At the same time, that we've got billionaires who are, who are making absolute screaming fortunes and paying squat, paying nothing, frankly, in income taxes, and very little in other taxes. In fact, in some cases, they're even getting property tax abatements, certainly for their business. I think this is an idea whose time has come. What say you? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. It's 27 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back with your calls after this. Stay tuned. They talk about critical moments. Thomas Paine, and these are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will now, no doubt, shrink from the service to their country, but tyranny like hell is not easily conquered. We read these stories and we think, oh yeah, that was a noble time back there during the American Revolution. It was actually very difficult because, a third of Americans didn't care, a third of Americans wanted to stay with England, and a third of Americans wanted a revolution. We're facing a similar difficult time, in my opinion, right now. We've got a psychopath in the White House. We've got right-wing billionaires buying up our media properties and turning it into basically neo-fascist pro-Trump propaganda. Donald Trump just declared an illegal war against a country that represented no threat to us whatsoever, apparently on behalf of Bibi Netanyahu. Now is the time we need you to support genuine independent media that will speak the truths like I just did. Call now.
Good day, I'm Thom Hartmann. Do we now know why we went to war with Iran? The Trump administration has stopped claiming Iran was developing a nuclear bomb and now instead says it launched the illegal strikes on Iran because it believed Israel was preparing an attack and that American troops would be targeted in response. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that it was clear Iran would retaliate against the United States if attacked by anyone. Rubio said officials knew an Israeli strike was coming and believed acting first, instead of talking Israel out of the attack, would reduce American casualties. Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane briefed Congress behind closed doors ahead of a House vote on a war powers resolution that could force the president to end hostilities. Lawmakers are questioning why Congress was sidelined and whether Netanyahu telling Trump to do the strike justifies starting another Middle East war. When a democracy enters war without full public debate, it weakens the constitutional balance meant to protect us from executive overreach. The war is expanding. How far will it go? Iran widened the conflict Tuesday, striking the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia as Washington pulled personnel from across the region. The United States and Israel continued airstrikes, and Israel sent ground forces into Lebanon. Explosions shook Tehran. Hundreds have been killed, most of them in Iran. Oil and gas supplies are being disrupted, and shipping and air travel are under strain. President Trump said the conflict could last 4 or 5 weeks and did not rule out boots on the ground. As fighting intensifies, the question is no longer how this began, but how far it'll spread. Wars tend to expand beyond their original aims, and democracies often pay in blood, treasure, and public trust. Is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act, arguing the tax code now favors extreme wealth while millions struggle paycheck to paycheck. The bill would impose a 5% annual wealth tax on about 938 billionaires and raise an estimated $4.4 trillion over 10 years. Lawmakers say the revenue could expand healthcare, housing, childcare, education, while ensuring no one worth under $1 billion pays a penny more. Supporters call it a modest correction to runaway inequality, and opponents argue it would discourage investment and growth. When wealth concentrates this dramatically, democracy itself is strained, and fair taxation becomes a safeguard for working Americans. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it has received more than 110 complaints from service members at over 30 different installations since this war in Iran began. A combat unit commander allegedly told non-commissioned officers that the conflict is part of God's plan to usher in the end times. Military Freedom Foundation President Mikey Weinstein says some commanders are describing the war as biblically sanctioned. One non-commissioned officer reported that such rhetoric is harming morale and unit cohesion. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibit inserting personal religious doctrine into official military messaging. The Pentagon has not publicly responded. But when military authority merges with apocalyptic beliefs, like it had in Iran, by the way, the boundary between constitutional democracy and religious crusade begins to erode. A Jeffrey Epstein walk of shame near the White House. In Washington's Farragut Square, a display modeled on Hollywood's Walk of Fame names public figures associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Each star links to Department of Justice files released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The figures include Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Prince, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They're all again facing scrutiny. All have denied prior knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Across the political spectrum, many Americans are furious at what they see as the rich and powerful evading real responsibility in the Epstein scandal, and they're making clear that they will not stop demanding equal justice under the law, no matter how influential the names involved may be. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I'm Thom Hartmann.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto,
welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour.
Trump is threatening
what
to crash
say you
our
about all
company.
this stuff going on here? Ron in Pueblo, Colorado. Hey, Ron, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, good to talk to you again. It's been a while. But earlier we were talking about Jared Kushner and his relationship with Israel. But there's a bigger partner in the Middle East that hasn't been discussed yet that Jared has a huge relationship with,
Saudi
Arabia.
Yeah.
And what is their role going to be in all of this? And I think what's going to happen is right now we've completely disrupted the oil chain to China between Venezuela and Iran. And I guarantee you when those reserves that they have start diminishing in China, Saudi Arabia is going to step in and say, hey, guys, you want to buy some oil? You buy from us at a premium. And who's that premium going to benefit but the Kushners and the Trump organization?
Yeah,
I think there's this backdoor deal. And the Saudis, of course. And I think it's going to allow it to happen. I think that Trump's going to allow that sale to happen once China becomes, quote-unquote, desperate. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Last night, Rachel Maddow was reporting that Trump was told to invade Iran by not just Israel, not just Netanyahu, but also by Mohammed bin Salman, Mr. Bonesaw, in Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons are fairly obvious. You just laid them out, Ron, and you did a great job of it.
Right. And I think it's going to, because right now they've got an oil reserve like we do, but the best estimates I've seen is 3 to 5 months, depending on how well they can ration that because they need it for their factories. And so if anything's going to happen, it's going to be either early June or early August. We'll know more by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and under the War Powers Resolution of 1973, which Trump is claiming as legitimizing his attack on Iran, it doesn't, because the War Powers Resolution requires that the United States be under attack, and we're not, or that an attack be imminent, and that Congress be notified of that. But assuming that he's going along with the War Powers Resolution, which he is asserting that he has 60 days before he has to get congressional authorization. A hell of a lot can happen in 2 months.
Well, and we've got special elections out there still, and we've got primaries happening. So we'll see. This is all. I know this will be in Mike Johnson's court, and so
it'll be interesting to see if this has any impact on the Texas primaries. We won't know for probably 4 or 5 days until the exit polling comes out. But is this going to hurt John Cornyn, for example? I just don't know. Ron, excellent points. Thank you for the call. Annette in Baltimore. Hey, Annette, what's on your mind today?
Hey, happy Tuesday. Well, only started with one. Now I got a few. Anyway,
okay.
What you were saying about the investigators.
Mm-hmm.
He did that the first time he was in office with the Russian, because Rachel, she good at giving us background, right?
That's right.
The
He fired the
A1
FBI
team
agents
for
who were looking into
Russia.
yeah.
Yeah, he fired all of them, right? But then when he came in, he started getting rid of all of the competent people. We got a whole bunch of incompetent people running shit. Try not to think about that much. But the reason why I called was I know America has done some really horrible things, but I don't remember us ever bombing schools or churches, not unless they were chocolate American or Native American things. But I don't remember us going to other countries bombing schools and hospitals. Have we?
Yeah, no, we haven't. I mean, that's what Israel did in Gaza over and over and over again.
I understand. It seemed like we following their example.
Well, I'm guessing that the girls' school that was blown up and the gymnasium that was blown up, collectively between the two of them, killing at least 200, maybe 300 children. I'm guessing that those were Israeli bombs, not American bombs. But who knows?
Oh,
I mean, who
well,
knows?
we in it with them. You understand? And they get their bombs from us, don't they?
Yeah.
Because we supply weapons to the world.
Excellent point.
Shit.
Annette. Yeah,
That's
you
what
can't.
we do
I'm
best.
sorry, we can't use that kind of language on the air, Annette. But I get it. Thank you very much. Tom, and apologies to anybody who might be offended. Tom in Celebration, Florida. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I'm not offended.
Yeah, neither am I, but, the FCC requires me to say that. What's up, Tom?
Epstein and the human trafficking. We have to remember, we look in our history books in the Old Testament, human trafficking was the norm back then.
And therefore, it's okay now if Trump and Epstein are engaged in human trafficking?
No, it is still going on today, and people will probably find out in the papers, in the Epstein files, that it is the super rich, the billionaires running this human trafficking around the world.
Right. Well, it's an industry in the Middle East. I mean, in the wealthy Arab countries, they import women as sex slaves. They import, regular workers as slaves, essentially. Yeah.
And Epstein was doing, so those women were probably, all traded all throughout the.
Well, Epstein was importing women from Eastern Europe. The former Soviet states, and I'm assuming when the Soviet Union was still around, he was probably importing some from there. And of course, that's where Trump imported two of his wives.
And that was with Trump, Melania. I would not be surprised if she was not one of those Russian mail order brides.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either.
Who would want to marry that slob?
Well, I don't know. She was fairly attractive, but she was also very, very close to Jeffrey Epstein, and there are reports that she was his girlfriend before she was Trump's. I don't want to get into the whole thing with Melania because I just don't know enough about it. But there are pretty shocking nudie pictures of her floating around the internet. Tom, thanks for the call. Dave in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I got a couple pointers. Do you remember the columnist Georgianne Geyer?
I don't.
This was back a good 10 years ago. She had a column titled "American Intervention Has Been One Disaster After Another." In that piece, she said, first, there was no dictate from above that our response must be to go to war with two of the most barbarous countries on earth, Iraq and Afghanistan. was the very deliberate choice of George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and Donald Rumsfeld. That sounds familiar? Deliberate choice?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she had a great moniker, though, for those. She called those three warketeers.
Warketeers. Yeah.
And
I like it.
Towards the end of it, though, she said that, saying, really, since Vietnam, we have been throwing it all away with the driven need of some of our male elites to lecture, intervene, invade, kill masses of innocent people, plus a few terrorists, and then hang around destructively while we build up hatred for ourselves and for all that we stand for.
Yeah.
The second one, real quickly, was, do you realize back in 2015 that we had we were flying air cover and reconnaissance for Iranian army and for their ground troops in the northern part of Iraq, and they were fighting and we were bombing ISIS, but working hand in glove with them. But yet in the southern part towards Yemen and that, we were fighting Iranian troops who are helping those Houthi rebels. I guess it was kind of like, hedging the bets.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's important, and I've been thinking about this, might make a good daily take for tomorrow, that the reason why Osama bin Laden attacked us on 9/11 was because we had built an Air Force base in Saudi Arabia for the Gulf War, for George Bush the Elder's Gulf War. And the Mohammed bin Salman, or no, was it bin, whatever it was, this Air Force base. I used to know the name of it. And that we still had soldiers there. And the men were watching pornography and the women were driving cars and showing their elbows. And this was sacrilegious. And for this reason, and bin Laden was explicit about it. He threatened us in 1999, in the New York Times. He said, I'm going to attack you if you don't stop doing this. And after 9/11, what did George W. Bush do? He shut down that Air Force base. He gave bin Laden what he wanted. But the fact of the matter is that basically, we pissed this guy off and he came after us. And what do you think we're doing in Iran right now? And I think Donald Trump wants a 9/11. I think he wants a major attack on the United States that he can use, like Hitler used the Reichstag fire in Germany, like George W. Bush used 9/11. I think he wants that. I think he's trying to get that. And I think that might even have something to do with why Kash Patel fired the intelligence unit of the FBI that was monitoring Iranian interference, and threats to the United States. So, Dave, I got to run, but thank you for the call. I realize I'm kind of wandering into what might be considered conspiracy theory here, but it sure makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. What say you? I'll pick up your calls in just a minute.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Defending America from the conservative weapons of mass deception. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Nicholas in San Cristobal, Mexico. Hey, Nicholas, what's on your mind today?
Oh, probably many of the same things that are on your mind.
Were you, by the way, impacted by the killing of the drug lord?
No. Okay. No. Well, except possibly in positive ways, but no, nothing bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Listen, very quickly, thank you for the kind words you had to say about me about a week ago or so, and taking what I have to say often seriously. And I hope you will again today, although at first you're going to think I'm a complete lunatic here, but I think I can convince you quickly. I was talking with a woman, a friend of mine who is Iranian, a friend of 40 years. Her father, I don't want to identify her here, her father was very, very high up in the Pahlavi regime. He was responsible for the second biggest influx of money into Iran, second only to oil.
Yeah.
He was a big shot.
The Pahlavi regime, for people who don't know what you're talking about, was the Shah. The Shah.
Yes,
Iran.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And one of her friends was the best play buddy of Reza Pahlavi, the one who's being spoken now about being raised to a position of power within the country again. And this idea came from her, and I thought, this is crazy, but my God, she's right, I think. There is one person who actually has the ability to bring the Iranian people together right now, and that's, believe it or not, Elon Musk. If he were to saturate the country with his Starlink internet, he would then be the one responsible largely for bringing about an actual uprising of the majority of Iranians who are waiting just to be able to do this, but who are now completely disconnected, and nobody seems to be doing anything about connecting them.
Well, how do you get millions of Starlink receivers into Iran without, the regime stopping that?
I don't think they have the ability to shoot down all of his satellites.
Oh, no, they wouldn't have to go after the satellites. They have already outlawed Starlink receivers. If you've got...
Yeah, but they still exist,
Well, there's a few,
They may
but
outlaw
if they find out that you've got one, they take you off and kill you.
Well, yes, of course, but that's going to be a risk already to the people, according to
So
my
how do we
plan.
get them in there?
What are you talking about, the receivers?
Yeah.
I'm saying they're already there. They're just not being...
No, they're not.
Using them.
They're not. I mean, the government may be using them, but,
How do you think they have gotten rid of all of them? There were tons of them.
Starlink receivers in Iran?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think Iran has only allowed an internet that they could control. They've done the same thing China does, which is all of the ports going into and out of the country to every other country on Earth for the internet.
You may be correct. I don't know, but we would need to find out first before we poo-poo the idea.
Yeah.
Because somebody needs to saturate that country with internet. That's the only way to bring about an actual uprising of people, allowing them to connect with each other.
Interesting.
Without that, they're dead in the water.
Along those similar lines, you see where Amazon Web Service has had a massive interruption of service that has brought down for I think 17 hours ChatGPT and a bunch of other services, and it's because their giant server farm and power station in Kuwait, I believe it was hit. No, maybe not Kuwait, but whatever country it was.Maybe it was the UAE. Yeah, in fact, I think it was the UAE.
Might have been in Dubai. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it was hit by a missile. Yeah, Nicholas, I got to run, but thank you for the call. Always good to hear from you. 49 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out. Home title. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Stephen in Detroit, Michigan. Hey, Stephen, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to talk about the cowardice that Lauren Boebert showed during the deposition by the Clintons regarding Epstein.
You mean when she posted the photo of Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, and then when the Clintons' lawyer confronted her about it, she was immediately like, oh, I'll take it down, and oh, it was before the deposition. And yet immediately after, she goes on Twitter again. This time it's about Bill Clinton, where she says, I asked former President Bill Clinton if his friend Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. and she had a picture of him in it. And it just reinforces the belief for me that these people, they back down instantly if confronted in person, but yet will jump online and talk smack behind the safety of their phone. And it's like, it reminded me of what happened with Trump and Zoran Mamdani, where suddenly, after all this smack talk online, when Zoran actually visits the White House, suddenly, oh, he's my best friend. And he's
well, he is a charming
and,
guy. But your point is well taken, Stephen. And the GOP is filled with these kind of cowards. I mean, you know, when your party only supports billionaires and pedophiles, you've got a hard time selling what you've got. And so you got to lie a lot, you know, and that's the problem that all these elected Republicans have. And Lauren Boebert is looking at, you know, possibly getting kicked out of office in November. There's, there's at least one solid Democrat in her district who may have a chance at taking her down. And so I'm guessing that she's, you know, trying to spread a little, you know, pixie dust around and get the attention of the MAGA base. Stephen, excellent point. Thank you for the call. Martha in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Hey, Martha, what's up?
I just had a very basic question. And my question is this war actually a legal war? And can people be punished for not taking orders? Because if the war isn't legal, then it stands to reason that the orders are not legal.
The problem that the military has is that Trump fired most all of the JAG officers. The JAG is the Judge Advocate General, and they are the lawyers in the military who the senior officials, well, actually anybody in the military, would go to and ask, is this a legal order or not, before they decide whether or not to defy that illegal order or what they think might be an illegal order. So there's nobody there. Pardon me, I sneezed.
So if
nobody
says,
there.
Well, you shoot this person, you
Pardon?
just say, okay, I'll shoot them.
Say that again?
I said, if I say to you, well, shoot this person, then you can just go ahead and shoot them because the president said so.
Right, because there's nobody to tell you if it's legal or illegal. That's the problem that the military has right now. So, you know, yeah, I get it. Martha, thanks for the call. Jerry in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Jerry, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Really quickly, to me, it doesn't matter what the Republicans, from the guy in the White House on down, want to call it, whether they want to call it a war or not. Iran is certainly treating it like a war, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, Trump has called it a war on 2 or 3 different occasions, but now the official talking points that they're mailing out to all their, or emailing out to all their right-wing buddies are, don't call it a war. Just like, you know, in Vietnam, it was a police action. Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, we dropped more bombs on Vietnam than we did on Germany in World War II, but it was a police action. Yeah. No, I get it. I get it, Jerry.
It's just like if you saw the original Rocky movie, like right between rounds, when Apollo's sitting on the stool, his manager comes over and says, he doesn't know it's a damn show. He thinks it's a damn fight. So if one side thinks it's a fight, it's a fight.
Yeah, good one. Excellent point.
Got one last thing for you, Tom. I was at an expo, and somebody came up to me and said, Trump's a dictator. I said, he's not a tater.
Jerry, thank you. Judith in Boston, Massachusetts. Hey, Judith, what's up?
His manager comes over and says, he doesn't know it's a
Judith, you are on the air. You need to turn down your radio.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello?
Hi, what's up?
I'm here. Hold on. I've got to turn the sound back up. Oh, I'm so happy I'm on. I have been just dying to ask you 2 questions. I am a diehard Democrat, so I'm not putting Democrats down. I know they're not perfect. None of us are. But at least we're not, I don't think we're super corrupt. What do you think Democrats should be doing so that when we get to November, the darn Republicans can't just whip out this get-out-of-jail-free card? Let's all vote Republican to keep the border closed or, keep immigrants out. And then the other thing is, I know that you can walk and chew gum at the same time, and you have a show to run. But when I listen to your show, I listen to MS Now, I know you have to cover things, but all I can hear in my brain going off at the same time is Trump is avoiding, like Netanyahu, he's avoiding going to jail with all these crazy things.
Yeah, this is the
does.
bottom line. That's why he ran for president this third time.
Exactly.
Because he didn't want to go to jail. And this is the reason why Netanyahu has talked Trump into bombing Iran, because he doesn't want to go to jail.
Right. But if we could hear that first.
Yeah.
With every news show.
I need to say it more often. I get it, Judith.
This
I get
is
it.
what's happening.
I'm sorry I'm out of time here, but thank you. Yeah, we're hitting the top of the hour. On the other side of the break, this is truly bizarre. Apparently, Pete Hegseth is one of these, let's make Jesus come again by having a war in the Middle East people. Mikey Weinstein is all over this with the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. We'll be talking to him right after the break. Stay tuned. This is shocking stuff.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out. Here's your chance to become part of something bigger than you, to become part of something that actually is helping America become a better country. And that's Free Speech TV, this extraordinary little television network that does so much heavy lifting with so little money. It's just about a $3 million a year budget for the whole year. And it's all coming from you and people like you. So first of all, if you've already made a contribution to Free Speech TV, whether it's a one-time gift, like to get my book, my new book, or whether it's a sustaining gift, you can also get my book that way. Thank you. If you haven't yet made a contribution to Free Speech TV, if you're not on our mailing list, if you haven't signed up, if you're not part of this family, please do so today. This is an urgent appeal. We need everybody on board. We need everybody's help. 877-378-8669, freespeech.org.
Good day, I'm Thom Hartmann. Do we now know why we went to war with Iran? The Trump administration has stopped claiming Iran was developing a nuclear bomb and now instead says it launched the illegal strikes on Iran because it believed Israel was preparing an attack and that American troops would be targeted in response. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that it was clear Iran would retaliate against the United States if attacked by anyone. Rubio said officials knew an Israeli strike was coming and believed acting first, instead of talking Israel out of the attack, would reduce American casualties. Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane briefed Congress behind closed doors ahead of a House vote on a war powers resolution that could force the president to end hostilities. Lawmakers are questioning why Congress was sidelined and whether Netanyahu telling Trump to do the strike justifies starting another Middle East war. When a democracy enters war without full public debate, it weakens the constitutional balance meant to protect us from executive overreach. The war is expanding. How far will it go? Iran widened the conflict Tuesday, striking the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia as Washington pulled personnel from across the region. The United States and Israel continued airstrikes, and Israel sent ground forces into Lebanon. Explosions shook Tehran. Hundreds have been killed, most of them in Iran. Oil and gas supplies are being disrupted, and shipping and air travel are under strain. President Trump said the conflict could last 4 or 5 weeks and did not rule out boots on the ground. As fighting intensifies, the question is no longer how this began, but how far it'll spread. Wars tend to expand beyond their original aims, and democracies often pay in blood, treasure, and public trust. Is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act, arguing the tax code now favors extreme wealth while millions struggle paycheck to paycheck. The bill would impose a 5% annual wealth tax on about 938 billionaires and raise an estimated $4.4 trillion over 10 years. Lawmakers say the revenue could expand healthcare, housing, childcare, education, while ensuring no one worth under $1 billion pays a penny more. Supporters call it a modest correction to runaway inequality, and opponents argue it would discourage investment and growth. When wealth concentrates this dramatically, democracy itself is strained, and fair taxation becomes a safeguard for working Americans. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it has received more than 110 complaints from service members at over 30 different installations since this war in Iran began. A combat unit commander allegedly told non-commissioned officers that the conflict is part of God's plan to usher in the end times. Military Freedom Foundation President Mikey Weinstein says some commanders are describing the war as biblically sanctioned. One non-commissioned officer reported that such rhetoric is harming morale and unit cohesion. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibit inserting personal religious doctrine into official military messaging. The Pentagon has not publicly responded. But when military authority merges with apocalyptic beliefs, like it had in Iran, by the way, the boundary between constitutional democracy and religious crusade begins to erode. A Jeffrey Epstein walk of shame near the White House. In Washington's Farragut Square, a display modeled on Hollywood's Walk of Fame names public figures associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Each star links to Department of Justice files released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The figures include Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Prince, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They're all again facing scrutiny. All have denied prior knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Across the political spectrum, many Americans are furious at what they see as the rich and powerful evading real responsibility in the Epstein scandal, and they're making clear that they will not stop demanding equal justice under the law, no matter how influential the names involved may be. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I'm Thom Hartmann.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us is Mikey Weinstein, the founder and president of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, militaryreligiousfreedom.org or MRFF.org, I believe. Is that right, Mikey?
That's correct, MRFF.org. We did like Mr. Firefighter.
It's great to have you back with us. Maybe it's just me. Your audio seems a little low. Back when I was a teenager, I was, for a while, very into Christianity, and this whole, Hal Lindsey's book had come out back in the 70s, you know, the late great Planet Earth, and there was this whole theory that was being floated that at the end days, as prescribed by Revelation, would happen when Israel was under attack, when Israel became a nation again and then was under attack, and all but 144,000 Jews were killed, and that 144,000 Jews all converted to Christianity, and then Jesus would return. And this belief, or variations on this belief, appear to have infected our Secretary of Defense, Whiskey Pete Hegseth. I understand that you guys are getting reports that this message that we're going to bring about the return of Jesus is starting to echo down through our military?
Well, it's even more than that, Tom. It's been stimulated by our early Saturday morning attack on Iran. Mm-hmm. And this happens with us. You know, we represent over 100,000 members of the military and veterans. Most happen to be Christians, but we represent all different faith traditions and non-faith traditions. But when Israel attacked the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, it was again supposed to be the first sign that weaponized Jesus will be back carrying an AR-15 on a white horse, pursuant to the mandates outlined in the book of Revelation, the Christian end times eschatology. They're promised a 200-mile-long river, 4.5 feet deep, filled with nothing but the blood of those that their version of weaponized Jesus is slaughtered at the Battle of Armageddon. So, of course, when we attacked Iran Saturday morning early, we started getting a multitude of reach-outs shortly thereafter from military members telling us that their chains of command were saying it's here, the good news is here. As you can see, as was foretold in Revelation, the time is here again. Now, this isn't coming from every member of the military, but it's coming from enough of them. When we broke the story last night, we had 110 reach-outs for help from 30 different military installations. We have about 1,000 around the world. Now we're well over 200. The story's viral. It's everywhere from different installations. Most of them happen to be Christians. And, the White House is changing its rationale for this unprovoked invasion attack on Iran that was doing nothing more to us, anything more than Mickey Mouse was. First it was regime change, then it was supposed to be, not necessarily in this order. They've got nukes, so they're close to having nukes. Then it was, we're going to pay them back for all of the improvised explosive devices that they helped ISIS and Al-Qaeda prepare and hurt and kill our folks during our activities of combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then, of course, why is anybody surprised when you've got, as you said, Whiskey Pete Hegseth, or we call him Kegseth. Every month he does a Jesus praise service during the duty day in uniform in the largest auditorium of the Pentagon. It's carried internally on Channel 2 at the Pentagon. They store all the videos to be looked at on their DVIDS system. Hegseth has made it clear that his mantra for life is all of Christ for all of life. So if you're a subordinate commander in the military and you see the Secretary of Defense doing this, making it clear that we're a Christian nation, and last time he did one of these events on Tuesday, February 17th, he does them every month, he invited his personal pastor, Doug Wilson, a raging Christian nationalist who thinks it was fine to have slavery here in America because it was biblically sanctioned, although not sanctioned and not designed enough to his liking for the Bible, but it was okay. And that he reminds people that many slave owners were actually very kind to their slaves, and the way they were kind to their living room furniture. They believe that Jews killed Jesus. Muslims cannot be trusted, and if you're LGBTQIA+, you don't deserve to live. And he had this person run the service in the middle of the Pentagon. Remember, the Department of Defense is the technologically most lethal organization ever created by our species, Homo sapiens. So now, again, we're over 200, well over 200 reports from 50 different military facilities. And whenever in the past, Tom, we have merged an extremist version of any religious faith, generally Christianity, with that part of the state that conducts warfare. And listen carefully, everybody out there. We do not end up with little babbling brooks, creeks, streams, ponds, or lakes. What we do end up with is oceans and oceans of blood. And that's what we're heading towards right now.
Yeah, I agree. Is this eruption throughout the military of people reaching out to you now saying that they have been told by their commanding officers, by superiors, that this is a wonderful thing because this is the opportunity for Jesus to return to earth if we just, I don't know, kill enough Jews or something, or enough Iranians. Is there any indication that this is coming from the top down specifically? I get it that, Hegseth is providing an environment where this sort of thing can grow and fester. But is this just a bunch of, uber Christian yahoos who happen to be, this one is command over here and this one's in command over there and this one's running this battalion or whatever, and they're espousing this stuff and you're getting these reports? Or is there any indication that anybody in senior command in the Pentagon has actually said anything like this or is driving this kind of message down to the troops?
There's nobody left at the Pentagon in a senior position who isn't part and parcel of Christian nationalism. Now, either you're resisting, we talked about this before on your show, or you are collaborating. And if you don't do either, you're collaborating. These commanders are giddy, they are thrilled, they are euphoric with what is happening. And that's the scary part. I've talked to journalists from all over the world today, the Far East, the Near East, the Middle East, Australia, Europe, everywhere. Even they're scared as to what's happening because they realize, if you're still in the Pentagon, today is the 3rd of March, 2026. And we've talked about it before. It feels like March 3rd, 1933 in Germany, but they didn't have social media and there were no nuclear weapons then. Now, they're smart enough in the Pentagon. They haven't responded. The White House has been asked, I know, because I'm seeing from journalists, they're waiting for comment from the White House on this from a million different entities. But the nice thing about Thom Hartmann and your show is that, you put us on even when we're not viral. And they haven't given any comment yet. I'm sure they'll say, there's nothing there. Don't pay any attention to this. None of it's true. But it is true. We have representatives of our foundation that work for us, volunteers, on most U.S. installations here in the U.S. and around the world, Tom. And that's over 1,000 of those. We have multiple reps on some of these military installations. We have them on nuclear submarines and nuclear aircraft carriers. So we don't know if there's a directive. They're stupid, these people, but not that stupid. But the bottom line is, if you see your commander, the Secretary of Defense, I'm not going to say war, and remember, making it clear that we are a Christian nationalist nation. And look at the right bicep of Pete Hegseth. He has a tattoo on there. Deus Vult, what God wills it.
Right.
That's a gang statement from the Crusades.
Yeah, it was the slogan of the Crusades.
It is. We are looking exactly like the 9th version of the 8 prior Crusades that began in the 11th century and finished in the 13th century. Yeah. And we are absolutely in every way, shape, or form providing a propaganda bonanza to Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and any of the extremists, whether they're Sunni or Shia, at the exact worst time to be doing it.
Yeah, and Mikey, the last question here. You're an astute observer of not just the military but politics as well. George W. Bush was very unpopular after the Supreme Court gave him the election in 2001, and 9/11 was the biggest gift he could have ever asked for. It catapulted him out of the doldrums, as it were. And of course, bin Laden said that he did this because were maintaining soldiers at the Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia, and the women were showing their elbows and driving cars, and men were watching pornography and drinking, and defiling the sacred land. I'm wondering now that Kash Patel has fired the entire CI-12 or whatever it was called, this group of special FBI agents who are looking for Iranian versions of 9/11, attacks on the United States. I'm wondering if Trump and Patel and the people around them and Hegseth are actually expecting or maybe even hoping for, and I realize how conspiracy nutty that sounds, something like 9/11 that will wipe Epstein off the front page, that will elevate Trump's popularity and might help him win or even seize control of the elections in November?
Well, I mean, we don't know for sure. There's a million theories that are out there, but we do know that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was very valuable, to President Johnson to get us into the Vietnam War. And of course, anything we can do to deflect away from the Trump Epstein files, as Jimmy Kimmel would say, at a time when we just had Hillary Clinton, of course, Bill Clinton on the Hill when she wasn't even mentioned in there. And then you got tens of thousands of times or whatever it is for Trump. I don't know what it is. I do know that that our fight was terrible under George W. Bush. It was also tough under Obama. It was tough under Biden. We had the entire House of Representatives, MAGA folks, tried to amend the Pentagon funding bill, as you know, Tom, to make it a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice for anyone in the military to even reach out to us for help. We had to work with the senators, on Democratic senators in conference to get that taken out before it went to Biden right towards the end of his presidency. I don't know. I know that what I do know is that if you are still in the Pentagon or in this government now at a senior position, you are either a lickspittle supplicant, a servile, obsequious, disgusting human being supporting MAGA and Trump and Christian nationalism, or even if you don't personally support, you're afraid to stand up because you need that paycheck too badly, so you are pretending to do so. But the rubber meets the road when the flesh meets the kinetic propelled combat weapons that are out there. We're losing people, we're getting people wounded, and when you try to indicate from anyone's perspective that this unprovoked attack, illegal, non-congressionally sanctioned attack on Iran is in any way connected with these end times eschatology that you studied so well as a kid, a young person, that's the end, man. That's the end.
I agree. Mikey Weinstein, mmrf.org is the website. Hang on just a second.
MRFF. Thom Hartmann program.
MRFF. Thank you very much. MRFF.org, Mikey Weinstein. Mikey, thanks so much for dropping by. It's always great talking.
Appreciate it. Bye.
And welcome back. Terry in Ventura, California. Hey, Terry, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Hey, thanks for taking me. The reason I'm calling I get the headlines from the various states through a website called Stateline, okay? Mm-hmm. And it led me to this story from Florida. I once lived there, so I'm interested, never been back since. But anyway, the story that it featured, there's been quite the governor of Florida can't do enough to attack illegal immigrants, as they're called. So there has been a collaboration between the ICE programs to build Alligator Alley, Alcatraz, rather, excuse me. And so there's been a mixture of state and federal funds because the governor of Florida is all for this. Well, anyway, it's on national parkland, so there's all kinds of environmental hoops that they have to go through. Mm-hmm. So, the implications of this are twofold. First of all, the feds, it's supposed to cost I think the story said $1.2 billion. The feds so far have only come up with, I believe the article said $600 million.
Yeah, but DeSantis is apparently facing a real budget crisis right now in Florida because of Alligator Alcatraz.
Exactly right. So they're supposed to have a special session. If I read the article right, what DeSantis has done to himself. Well, first of all, as an outer stater, I find it offensive that ICE is using FEMA funds to help pay for these.
Tom Tillis went off on Kristi Noem about that about an hour and a half ago. And just went.
Oh, really?
He just went after her. Yeah, Tom Tillis, the senator from North or South Carolina, who's retiring, so he's now free to speak ill of Republicans. Yeah.
But the essence of this is it should impact Floridians. It should be good for Florida Democrats. DeSantis, there are state FEMA funds for their disasters, and they have more than a few. Mm-hmm. He has raided state FEMA funds prior to the next hurricane season. He wants to get the Fed money to get back the state funds that he's invested in Alligator Alcatraz, and as of right now, they're having a budget crisis because he's raided the state emergency funds. Okay, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought that an interesting story.
It's more than just an interesting story, though, Terry. DeSantis is, much like Donald Trump, an insanely corrupt authoritarian, wannabe authoritarian leader. And, his hopes for the presidency have been dashed, I think. He was just a little too weird to make it through the primaries in 24. And he genuinely is weird, this guy. But, he's very good, apparently, at getting business people and getting politicians together and moving money around, to his advantage. But as you point out, Terry, not to the advantage of average Floridians. And Florida is just in a continuous disaster situation because, A, they've always been in Hurricane Alley, but B, with global warming now, it's getting even worse. So, this could hurt DeSantis very badly. There's some interesting stories about that and headlines about it. In fact, I think Drudge covered it earlier today. Terry, I got to run, but thanks for bringing it up. Good talking to you. It's 22 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a minute and the news of the day. Stay tuned. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 24 minutes past the hour. This is just scary stuff. That we've got people in our military who actually think that starting a war between Iran and Israel, or taking the side of Israel in a war between Iran and Israel, in the hopes that eventually it will fulfill a biblical prophecy, which, by the way, calls for the destruction of Israel, will somehow bring Jesus back to earth. And that it's going to be, Jesus with an AR-15 strapped across his chest. It's just wild stuff. It's astonishing. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
What you were just talking about reminds me, I lived in Brooklyn Heights, and it was the home for a long time to the Jehovah's Witnesses. And every few years, they predicted the end of the world, and it didn't happen. And they just went on with their lives. Like a lot of religions predict the end of the world at some point.
Sure.
But
that was the foundation of Mormonism, too.
Right. What I was calling about is I don't understand why there isn't any insurgency in Iran, or we didn't promote insurgency, give them intelligence or weapons or whatever they need with expatriate Iranian people, and instead of doing this. I mean, they had a revolution before. They could have another revolution, but
you're right.
And same thing with Hamas.
I think there's a very easy answer to that question, Bill, and that is that we are not doing what's in the best interest of the United States or even of the region. We're doing what is in the best interest of one man, Benjamin Netanyahu, who used to sleep at Jared Kushner's apartment when he came to the United States back in the 70s and 80s, and now has Kushner pretend negotiating on his behalf to get all of the Iranian senior officials together so they can evaluate the proposal so we can drop a bomb on them and kill them all at once. And we're doing this for Netanyahu, and he wants us to do this. He's the one who told Trump to do this. We're doing this because he's looking at going to prison for being a corrupt criminal if he doesn't get himself reelected. And he's got an election coming up. So, this is not rocket science. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. Bill, I got to run, but thank you for the call, because you're spot on. This is how we should have handled it. If you want to see a country change, support them from the bottom up. Don't try and kill them from the top down. It's 27 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truths that Whiskey Pete Hegseth would really rather you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with you. We need your help. Free Speech TV needs your help. Without you, this network dies. It's just that simple. And, 4 times a year, we come to you and say, please support Free Speech TV. And every year, or every quarter, there's a number of just extraordinary people who step up. And some step up in a really big way. This is your opportunity to step up, to become part of something bigger than you, to help make sure that independent media actually exists, whether it's including Free Speech TV in your will, and they can tell you how to do that, which is a great idea, or whether it's making a one-time contribution and getting a premium gift, or a multiple, a monthly contribution, which is the best kind, by the way, because it allows them to do budgeting. Now is your chance. freespeech.org is the website. 877-378-8669 is the phone number. Please call.
Good day, I'm Thom Hartmann. Do we now know why we went to war with Iran? The Trump administration has stopped claiming Iran was developing a nuclear bomb and now instead says it launched the illegal strikes on Iran because it believed Israel was preparing an attack and that American troops would be targeted in response. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told lawmakers that it was clear Iran would retaliate against the United States if attacked by anyone. Rubio said officials knew an Israeli strike was coming and believed acting first, instead of talking Israel out of the attack, would reduce American casualties. Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane briefed Congress behind closed doors ahead of a House vote on a war powers resolution that could force the president to end hostilities. Lawmakers are questioning why Congress was sidelined and whether Netanyahu telling Trump to do the strike justifies starting another Middle East war. When a democracy enters war without full public debate, it weakens the constitutional balance meant to protect us from executive overreach. The war is expanding. How far will it go? Iran widened the conflict Tuesday, striking the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia as Washington pulled personnel from across the region. The United States and Israel continued airstrikes, and Israel sent ground forces into Lebanon. Explosions shook Tehran. Hundreds have been killed, most of them in Iran. Oil and gas supplies are being disrupted, and shipping and air travel are under strain. President Trump said the conflict could last 4 or 5 weeks and did not rule out boots on the ground. As fighting intensifies, the question is no longer how this began, but how far it'll spread. Wars tend to expand beyond their original aims, and democracies often pay in blood, treasure, and public trust. Is it time for the morbidly rich to finally pay up? Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ro Khanna have introduced the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act, arguing the tax code now favors extreme wealth while millions struggle paycheck to paycheck. The bill would impose a 5% annual wealth tax on about 938 billionaires and raise an estimated $4.4 trillion over 10 years. Lawmakers say the revenue could expand healthcare, housing, childcare, education, while ensuring no one worth under $1 billion pays a penny more. Supporters call it a modest correction to runaway inequality, and opponents argue it would discourage investment and growth. When wealth concentrates this dramatically, democracy itself is strained, and fair taxation becomes a safeguard for working Americans. Is the Iran war being cast as God's plan for our military? The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it has received more than 110 complaints from service members at over 30 different installations since this war in Iran began. A combat unit commander allegedly told non-commissioned officers that the conflict is part of God's plan to usher in the end times. Military Freedom Foundation President Mikey Weinstein says some commanders are describing the war as biblically sanctioned. One non-commissioned officer reported that such rhetoric is harming morale and unit cohesion. The Constitution and the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibit inserting personal religious doctrine into official military messaging. The Pentagon has not publicly responded. But when military authority merges with apocalyptic beliefs, like it had in Iran, by the way, the boundary between constitutional democracy and religious crusade begins to erode. A Jeffrey Epstein walk of shame near the White House. In Washington's Farragut Square, a display modeled on Hollywood's Walk of Fame names public figures associated with Jeffrey Epstein. Each star links to Department of Justice files released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The figures include Ghislaine Maxwell, Bill Clinton, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Prince, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Les Wexner, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They're all again facing scrutiny. All have denied prior knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Across the political spectrum, many Americans are furious at what they see as the rich and powerful evading real responsibility in the Epstein scandal, and they're making clear that they will not stop demanding equal justice under the law, no matter how influential the names involved may be. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. I'm Thom Hartmann.
Trump lost, voter suppression won in 2024. That's the headline over at HartmannReport.com, and just a brilliant article written by Greg Palast exclusively for the Hartmann Report. He writes, Trump lost. That is, if all legal voters were allowed to vote, if all legal ballots were counted, Trump would have lost the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Vice President Kamala Harris would have won the presidency with 286 electoral votes. And if not for the mass purge of voters of color, if not for the mass disqualification of provisional and mail-in ballots, if not for the new mass vigilante challenges in swing states, Harris would have gained at least another 3.5 million votes, topping Trump's popular vote tally by 1.2 million. Greg brings us the numbers. He lays it out. You can read it over at HartmannReport.com, absolutely free. It's titled Trump Lost, Vote Suppression Won at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour, and picking up your calls here, Kevin in Bainbridge Island, Washington. Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
So this Khanna-Sanders billionaire tax bill kind of gives me a little heartburn. I don't think it raises enough.
I agree with you, Kevin. No, I think we should outlaw billionaires altogether. But, this is, I'm not operating in the realm of necessary political reality. These guys are. I think this is something that's viable.
I get that. But let me lay it out. The great wealth transfer, 45 years, 1975 2020, $50 trillion transferred from
They're
the
estimating
bottom
now that the
90%
number is actually closer to 70 trillion.
Right. Some estimates up to 80, right?
Yeah.
So if you do, the back of the envelope math, Connor Sanders, they say they're going to come up with what, 10 billion over 10 years? Is that what they're doing? A trillion, yeah.
Yeah. Let me pull out my article here and give you the actual numbers.
I think they're about 7 trillion light. It
would generate an estimated $4.4 trillion over a decade. It's a 5% annual wealth tax.
Yeah,
and that's a mind-boggling amount of money, actually.
It's a tremendous amount of money, but to consider what has been taken from us, in regard to
we want reparations from the billionaires,
healthcare, infrastructure, what's been taken from the people and moved to the top 1%. To claw that back, I think it would take double this proposed bill. And I understand the limitations of getting the reality of getting it passed, but.
I think it's something whose time has come, and I think that running against the Epstein billionaire class is something that you're going to see happening in a big way this fall. It is what FDR did back in the 30s, and it worked for him, and the Democrats need to get back on that. Kevin, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Great to hear from you. Carl in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Hey, Carl, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I think you're the best, man.
Thank you.
But look, getting on a couple of points I wanted to make. As far as Jesus and Heckchef and all that stuff, I was taught that Jesus was created by the Roman Catholic Church during the Nicene Council. If anybody reads that council meeting notes, they will find out that was when it was canonized into law that Jesus Christ was a person.
Yeah, that was when the Roman Republic became the Roman Catholic Church, basically, in, 333 or something like that.
Yes, right. So my other point was with China, China's, excelled in all these different areas of excellence. They got technology, they got, sciences and all this stuff. The only one thing that they haven't conquered was finance. So when they were talking about, the Saudis selling oil to China during, the point where China would be in need of oil, my thought was, what if China said, okay, I'll buy the oil from Saudi, but we're going to buy it in our currency.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is to you, do you think that would interrupt or flip the U.S. dollar, in terms of
there's been a movement to challenge the dollar as the petrocurrency of the world, as the default currency for the world, particularly with regard to oil transactions. And, the BRICS countries have tried or talked about this. You've got the Saudis talked about having their, I think it's called the rial, maybe I'm wrong, their currency being used. The yuan has been floated. Right now, China's economic power is not large enough or international enough to really pull this off. But I think that the damage that Trump has done to the dollar, the dollar's down 9% since Trump was sworn into office. He's driving down the dollar. And now we've got another world war that I think we're on the brink of. I really do. I'm very concerned that 6 months from now we're going to be looking back on this and thinking these were the good times. And it's just very, very concerning. So anyhow, the other countries chipping away at I wrote an op-ed about this about 3 weeks ago. Other countries chipping away at the dollar has become more and more aggressive. And, the euro was another currency that was considered. So we'll see. We'll see.
Right.
But,
okay. Well, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Good talking to you. Keith in Seattle. Hey, Keith, what's up?
Yes, thanks, Tom. I'm a loyal listener, and but I wanted to bring attention to. I think you're right that Trump is leaning into this war on behalf of his buddies, but also to hide from what's going on with the Trump Epstein files. And I'm kind of shocked that people aren't more aware of, that where they say the 13-year-old files seem to be somehow missing from the...
Yeah, it sure vanished from the headlines, didn't it, Keith?
Yeah, are other people aware that you can find the deposition with a 13-year-old from September 30th, 2016?
I think that's a different 13-year-old. Isn't that Katie Johnson?
I don't know, but when I read this back in 2016, it was enough for me to see that this is really horrible stuff that they're doing.
Yeah.
And the details are in there. Tiffany Doe and Jane Doe are cited as plaintiffs against Epstein and Trump. And Jane Doe was recruited by Tiffany Doe, who was a recruiter for Epstein and Trump. And she went to several parties and had been raped at each occasion, 4 times at least, where Trump was there and participated. And they even mentioned Maria, a 12-year-old, that they had disappeared. And Jane Doe said she hadn't seen her since the 3rd occasion. And, the stuff with the ranch makes me very curious. But yeah, Maria was somehow disappeared. And they threatened her and her family, both of them and their families.
Right.
So people should go find this themselves. The case is 1:16-Charlie Victor -07673, Southern District of New York. Maybe it's widely known about, but the people act like it's such a mystery. What may he have done? The details are in there, and it's very... Obviously, I'm pretty wound up about it, but I do think that the bigger picture, he'll bring us all down with him.
Yeah, no, he will. This is Hitler's last days. He wanted to burn down Germany. Trump wants to burn down everything. That's his impulse.
Yeah.
Speaking of burning down, the U.S. consulate in Dubai is now on fire. It's been hit by an Iranian missile. Keith, thank you for the call. Catherine in Chicago. Hey, Catherine, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Years ago, when I was in the social work field, I worked with homeless vets. I am in no way a vet myself. I am a civilian through and through. Talking about this crap with Iran specifically, taking all the fake religious garbage out of it, the movement for soldiers to defy illegal orders, the movement could have been more bold, but now the soldiers won't even have a choice of that, because the soldier's primal instinct, almost above all else, right, is to fight with each other and protect each other and fight for the innocent. They're not going to have a choice to defy these orders, because soldiers are already dead. All this other stuff around the world is already happening without declaring, quote unquote, official war. They're going to have to fight anyway. That's just the bold, brutal reality of it. Possibly.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I guarantee you, Barron Trump, Don Jr., and Eric all have congenital bone spurs. They will not be in the military. Catherine, excellent point. Thank you so much for your call. And we're going to have a whole new generation of homeless vets and Gold Star families, people grieving the loss of it. We already have 6 dead American soldiers. And Donald Trump is like, well, yeah, that happens. There's more coming. Yeah. This is sick. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. 46 minutes past the hour. Colin in Columbus, Ohio. Hey, Colin, what's on your mind today?
What's up, Tom? So I have a Christian nationalism on my mind. So I grew up in a small town outside of Columbus. It's like the heart of MAGA. And it was MAGA before MAGA was a thing. And my town was an evangelical town. And I was raised in a church that wasn't evangelical, so it's a minority church. And they treated me like I wasn't a Christian. Like they were like, he's a non-believer. He's just, he's not one of us. So I was othered by them. And now they got this giant movement that is actually gaining momentum and influence in the entire country. And it's hilarious that most of the rhetoric that they spew sounds exactly like anti-Muslim Israeli rhetoric. And I just wonder, like, if it can succeed and change the Constitution and everything, like, what direction do we go? Because, like, there's Catholics, there's Baptists, there's all kinds. There's even Mormons that are calling themselves Christians. So, like, what happens when they actually have power? Like, who's going to be discriminated against? Even the Jews.
Well, they do actually have power right now.
Jewish people. What's that?
They do actually have power right now, and this is one of the things that the Military Religious Freedom Foundation is fighting against, is the power that they're exercising over our troops, to impose religion on them. And then you've got, Trump and Hegseth. Hegseth thinks he's fighting the Ninth Crusade here. And he's got a Crusader cross tattooed on his chest. And he's got Deus Vult tattooed on his arm, which was the slogan of the Crusades. God wills it. So I think we're already there, Colin.
Yeah, like, I think we're there, like, when it comes to like finding excuses to invade other countries. But I'm talking about, like, on a social level, like when we start controlling, like, religion, actually, like bringing back Christian values.
But
like,
see, that's already happening, Colin. I mean, the anti-abortion movement is being driven by this. The anti-queer movement, the anti-LGBTQ movement is being driven by this right-wing so-called Christianity. The movement to strip women of the right to vote is being driven by these right-wing so-called Christians. The movement to have dear leader, basically deified, is being led by them. All in the name of Jesus, who would be horrified if he were to see the things that they're doing in his name.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. But what I'm trying to say is, like, when they actually have full control, who's going to be the influence? Is it going to be Catholicism? Is it going to be evangelicalism? Or are they all going to...
Well, increasingly, they're finding points of commonality, particularly around abortion. This was Jerry Falwell's great invention in the 1980 election. The Southern Baptist Convention had been pro-choice right up until 1980 or maybe 79, and Falwell and his buddies decided that hooking up with the Catholics on this thing could be a real game changer, and so they did. And carried it into the Reagan administration, even though Reagan had signed the most liberal, pro-choice abortion bill in California when he was governor. So, it's already happening, Colin. Colin, thank you very much for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. It's before the hour, picking up your calls here. Phil in Long Branch, Washington. Hey, Phil, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Good to speak to you again. Hey, just going back to Mikey and the MRFF. Right now there's such a huge placement of religious fanatics, throughout our government, Voight, Johnson, Hegseth. Remember Peter Thiel? He is the one who has pushed Vance to his position.
Right. He just did a lecture series on the Antichrist.
Exactly. And the thing about it, I mean, it's scary to know who's in a position where they can push the button to bring on Armageddon. But just the pure hubris of these guys, because I'm sure many of them believe that they're the ones who are going to be raptured.
Yeah, yeah. Or they're not even thinking it through that way. They just see this as a way to get public support so that they can have more wealth and more power.
Yeah, and they use Trump and people like him as their useful idiots to get to that.
Yeah. I read some of the excerpts or transcripts from Peter Thiel's rants about the Antichrist, and it's pretty out there stuff. I mean, it's sort of like, a televangelist combined with Curtis Yarvin, moldy as mold bug or whatever his name is.
And there's very few people that will understand it because it's so esoteric.
Or it's phrased, the language is esoteric, but, the bottom line basically is that democracy is a weak thing because it's basically mob rule, and the mob isn't always smarter, and really what you need is rule by very, very smart people. And how do you know that they're really smart? Because they're rich. How do you get rich? You got to be smart. It ignores the fact that, like the guy who bought CBS and CNN now is a trust fund baby. This is Nepo media, basically. Nepotism.
Yeah, and their wealth is their gift from God.
Yeah, yeah, and well, this is the old Calvinist thing. The Calvinists, John Calvin back in the day, in the 1500s, as I recall, proposed that the big struggle, the big challenge that Christians have is trying to figure out what God's will is. What does God want? And who does God want to be in charge? Because one of the basic tenets of Calvinism is predestination, is that, there's this reference in I think it might be Timothy, I forget where it is. It's one of Paul's letters. And he talks about how, our fate was determined even before we were conceived, that God has planned our entire lives. And so this idea of predestination was adopted by John Calvin. It's one of the 5 basic tenets of Calvinism. And so the challenge is, how do we find the people who God predestined to be our leaders? How do we identify them? And Calvin's answer to that was, look for the rich people, because that's another sign of God's blessing. And so, the Calvinists, for a long, long time were preaching, and still are arguably, that rich people should be running the world. And this is basically Peter Thiel's pitch as well, among others. It helps to be a billionaire to think like that. Phil, I got to run, but thank you for the call. What excellent conversation. Geraldine in Hartford, Connecticut. Hey, Geraldine. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. I had 2 quick concerns. One was, when is America, the elephant in the room, going to address the anti-Black racism in America and address reparations? Because I think that would lead to less division and more Americans being focused on the politics and the real topics, and not elect a felon for president.
Mm-hmm. I think
we can't divide Americans anymore if we address that. Germany has done it with anti-Semitism, and I don't think white Americans are that fragile where they can't address anti-Black racism, and let's try to move forward.
I agree.
More progressively.
I agree. And Canada did something similar to this with their Indigenous people. Establishing basically half a state for them, and this is a real challenge in the United States, and we're going backwards right now. I mean, Geraldine, we're Trump is like stripping. I mean, George Washington's home. They just took off all the reference to the slaves that he held, the enslaved people that he held there. We are being run. Our country is being run right now by a group of white people who are just openly racist. Kristi Noem telling ICE to look for brown and black people. Pete Hegseth firing virtually all of the senior levels of the military that were black people or women, and a few Hispanics, but particularly focusing on black people. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was a black man, the defense secretary under Biden. Maybe the chairman was also. But in any case, this purge has been going on, and it's going to continue for another 3 years if these guys have any say over it, because they're doing everything they can to make America white again. I mean, they're blocking legal immigration of everybody except white people, specifically white South Africans right now. He wants to bring more white South Africans, but they're trying to block all legal immigration into the United States. Yeah,
I heard he was bringing 1,000 white South Africans in the country.
Yep, there you go. Geraldine, I'm out of time. I'm sorry, but thank you for the call. It's a great topic. And thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
One-fifth of our pledge time, this week and next is pretty much almost gone now. This is the second day of our pledge drive, Tuesday. Please consider making a contribution right now. It's important. It really is important. This is how this network stays alive. It's how we stay on the air. It's how we keep the staff employed and the electrons flowing. It's what brings this to your television set. So please go to freespeech.org right now or call 877-378-8669 and become part of this extraordinary family, this Free Speech TV family, this amazing little organization, the little engine that could. They're doing such a great job. I mean, the people who are running this network are just marvelous. And they're doing such a great job, but they can't do it without you, without your help. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org.